नुक्ता ची है गम दिल उसको सुनाए न बने क्या बने बात जहां बात बनाए न बने. That was from Ghalib, one of my dad's favorite couplet and the song from Mirza Ghalib. And another one from Majaz Lakhnavi. बताने वाले वहीं पर बताते हैं मंजिल. बताने वाले वहीं पर बताते हैं मंजिल.
बताते हैं
हजार
मंजिल.
बार जहां से गुजर चुका हूं मैं. कभी ये जोम कि तू मुझसे छुप नहीं सकता. कभी ये वहम कि खुद भी छुपा हुआ हूं मैं. Good evening and welcome to Shitala's Conversation, Sunday evening, 7 p.m. IST show. This is your host, Jugal Kaul, speaking from the threshold of August, April delights in the corner of my studio. This is our 102nd historic show. I remember April is one of my favorite, months. And people, especially the Kashmiri diaspora, they don't like April. They start feeling hot in the beginning of the April. But I don't know. I was born somewhere in the previous lives, probably in Sahara Desert. And I love the sun in the April, the kerosene of April. So I would like to put some beautiful lines by Ogat Ash. Praise the spells and bless the charms. I found April in my arms. April golden, April cloudy, gracious, cruel, tender, rowdy. April soft in flowered languor. April cold with sudden anger. Ever changing, ever true. I believe that has been a long, zappy sway together, through and through, across the deeper time spaces which had eloped, vanished into this forlorn, forgotten base of history. Like street bioscope wala, that rustic bioscope wala. I always take courage to romanticize in taking everyone around and catapulting them to these snippets, multi-hue, multicolored snippets, those lark from our backyards. Time is an elusive term. Time is something we talk about. There are many definitions in spiritual domain and scientific domain. But time, we all agree that time is dynamic. And this whole existence, this eternal existence, immortal existence which we witness, which is ever expanding, as per the scientists, what scientists say, this is also dynamic. So are the galaxies, so are the solar systems, and the planet is not the different one, especially the earth. Having said that, yet again, I think within the constraints of time, uh, the human evolution, the life on this planet, within the constraints of time, for the evolution and civilizational link is very important, because this chain link of civilization is something which helps the human kingdom, the animal kingdom, the mineral kingdom to evolve in a very nature's artistic way. So if we try to disconnect it and we want a very prompt action in this evolution, we are disarrayed, and there's a delirium, you know there's a conflict in our identities, in everything around. So something very in tune with nature is something to connect with the roots. I believe the latest science also corroborates with Alex Haley's that classic novel Roots, Saga of an American Family, in which he also talks about he conveys about the carnation, which is the Oriental philosophy. And without in absentia of that, we can see the many races, many places, Central Asia, Far Asia, India, and many places in India as well. You can see the people, wherever people get disconnected as a race, as a community, they get into the delirium, the trouble. You can see that. I personally feel lot many of, not entire Iran, some part of the Iran, I can see the people here in the roads of Bangalore and other places, how much delirium they are in. because they were forced into something which was something disconnect with their evolution. So these things happen. This is what my point of view, that you need to have connection with the roots. Shitalath conversation, we are slightly ambling in a very humble way, in very small steps towards this cause, towards this essence, by involving the great, brilliant minds, contemporary minds of our times, especially from the diaspora, engaging them, in resurrecting, in invoking, in rejuvenating, in creating this renaissance in a very scholarly manner, in a very authentic fashion, in a very truthful way, with great insights, great understanding. So that's what this we do it in Shitalath conversations. I feel that Kashmir, as we talk about Kashmir, since time immemorially situated in the right lap of this young Himalaya, the breathing Himalaya, the organic Himalaya, the towering, inspiring Himalaya, has always
Yes.
remained as the epicenter, rather partly a cradle, and we always know it as a crown of this entire pan India, which we call as Bharat, up to the Gandhar Desh and other places. So it has always been a kind of a place from where the wisdom has flown into the other parts of the world, up to the Caribbean, up to this, this Far East, up to the USSR, up to the Europe, and many other places, up to Iran, boundaries of Iran and other places. And these wisdoms have been grown, homegrown, and certainly there has been a synthesis, flow of currents from other places as well, in the rest of the Bharat and other places of the Central Asia as well. But then again, whatever has come in, whichever torrent has come in, it has become Kashmiri. There are a lot many people who came around. I don't want to name them again and again. I've spoken a number of times about these people, be it Vasugupta, be it Utpal Deva, be it Soma Deva, many people, and be it
And many
Abhinav,
others.
be the philosophies, be the literature, be the science of aesthetics, be the color, be the transitions, be the spiritual side. I don't call it spiritual, I call it sciences, because they are ultimately something which open up you to the higher consciousness. And higher consciousness is something which
Okay.
Einstein says makes you perfect. And it gives you intuitiveness, and it gives you better mind, from a very common perspective. So that is how the Kashmir has always been. It has been the seat of music, seat of learning. People from here, Kumarajivi, Sharangadev's generations from here went to and they made this Karnataka music, Hindustani Gharana music. They created that syntax. So that is how it is happening all over, and it has always remained in a very important part of this subcontinent, especially the Bharat, the great Bharat, which existed as a civilization, if not territory, but as a civilization. And today we are very much, grateful to one personality who's coming as our conversationalist, co-conversationalist, and he's a man, a very renowned academician, a scholar, administrator, intellectual, and historian. We'll be talking about his reminiscence about Kashmir as he's witnessed Kashmir. And we'll be talking about thereafter, life thereafter, his forays into the different destinations, his travels into the places, European places, and the places of Caribbean Sea and in the Caribbean islands, and also about his works, his literature, his books, his authorship, and other aspects. But predominantly, we are going to talk about Kashmir, his panorama of Kashmir, his spectacle of Kashmir, and also about his travels, his book, very famous book, that is the Indian Diaspora in Caribbean. So that is something, it has always fascinating me, the Trinidad, Tobago. I remember I was a very great lover of that book, Papillon, if anybody has read it or not. The Papillon was a wonderful book, and it was about that. The Papillon means butterfly in the French. It was written firstly by the French. It was about the prisoner and his forays and his journey into escape into in those Caribbean islands, and then a very horrific stories and adventures and the human spirit, the fight, the resistance, and survival. There was a movie also on it, and it was a very popular movie. We had seen it also. That was done by Steve McQueen was my favorite actor, and Dustin Hoffman. Steve McQueen played this Papillon, and at the end, you know, he dives in that Red Sea and he cries that I'm free. So that it's a kind of a very heartening, and certainly it takes me back to the Trinidad, to all these places, the Caribbean areas. So I'm very much interested in the Caribbean areas. Also, I've seen that the one of the very great writers from V.S. Naipaul, although he's very it is said that his books, especially on India, are in a I mean, he has written it in a very negative way, pessimistic way rather. The India, the mutilated civilization, mutinies, millions of mutinies, dark circle. There's a trilogy on India he has written. But I think besides that, he is a very, very, very upright, very internationally famous, and he has also talked good about India, his roots from India. His first novel, probably I have read his first novel half through, much years ago. It was written the same time as in around 1960s around, and I felt that he writes wonderfully. That novel, that was a house for Mr. Biswas. It was a characterization of his father, a Brahmin who probably migrated from India during the British colonial rule in India, into the Caribbean area, and then finally his existence, his search for his identity, the lost root, which I was talking about at the beginning. So we're talking about today's guest, and he is the vice chancellor of University of Allahabad, former vice chancellor of University of Allahabad, former vice chancellor of the Kalyani University, West Bengal, former professor and head of Department of History, Central University, Hyderabad, and he's presently working as also the honorary vice chancellor of Noble International University, Canada, in its USA campus. Uh, he has remained as the chief proctor of Central University, Hyderabad, and the what do you call it? He has remained and served in many departments in the Punjab Central University, Punjab, and has been on the chair to many universities like the West Indies University, Trinidad and State University, Georgia, and has been on the panel of that the council, the council, academic council of United
UN,
Nations system,
United
United Nations system at Yale University, USA, and he has been a visiting professor to many wonderful universities, and his contribution is immense. Wherever he has gone, he has written something, jotted something, given something to those universities, brought back the great Indian studies. The chair of Indian studies, great glitter and great honor. He has gone to the university. He has been the visiting professor to the University of Michigan and University of Shahani. I don't remember all the University of Shahani, California.
Absolutely
Then
historic.
University of Heidelberg, Bomberg, University of Bomberg, University of Berlin, and uh, Ashgabat University, probably from Turkmenistan. So he has served in all this. He's a very widely traveled personality. Many more universities. I may not be able to name all of them. I have annexed it into my promo, the entire biodata, entire visits of Professor Hanglusa, and he has been a very widely traveled personality who has contributed in his travels as an academician, as a person of academia, and has been awarded, rewarded for his illustrious role in the field of academia by the most prestigious organizations in the country and abroad. Former alumni of Degree College Anantnag, former alumnus of Degree College Anantnag, and the former alumnus of Kashmir University and Jawaharlal Nehru University, where he has done MPhil and earned his doctorate degree.
Each years.
He has written very illustrious articles, more than 250 illustrious articles, well-read, well-meaning, profound, research-based articles in around 250 in number on various subjects, including gender, culture, history, environment, all these subjects, and he has written, and those are almost published in the very, very premier journals in country and abroad. There are many things about him, certainly. I remember once, I remember when I cleared my, I was a person who used to travel. I have mixed sensibilities from childhood. I used to travel from Jammu to Kashmir and Kashmir to Jammu because my father was posted here and there, and then we had to go to Madhopur also in between by my uncle's state. So sometimes we were in Jammu, sometimes we were in Kashmir. I passed my ninth class in Jammu in the March session, and in Kashmir I had to go and to appear in the November session. There were hardly 4 or 5 months in between. So I was 13 and a half, and probably in papers it was 14 and a half. There, in those days, they used to increase the age just to put you in advance of the school, probably like that. So many have the similar stories. But I went to this great institution known as National High School. It was a great institution with great teachers, with
Yes.
ample
Yes.
knowledge, and enormous knowledge about literature, art, about Sanskrit, about English, about Persian, mathematics, geometry. I don't. There were people of very next, very humble, very. They used to take a very small salaries out there, and in this very hectic schedule, shoestring schedule, I had a great respite in between, that we went to an excursion, around 50 buses from national school with all the teachers along, Bashir Saab, Father Saab. We went to the Kokarnak was a great delight. It was
Yes.
something,
That's my
uh,
place.
great place for me. I really loved that place. I wanted to settle there only. And then the teachers were great in Kashmir. They came with it. They were different from the rest of the country, I suppose. They came. They made us to sit. They made us to eat. Then they started lecturing the history. The rivulets are moving around. They are talking about the history. And it was all mix of great geniuses. I have great memories of Kokarnak, and I always think all the people must have gone there. I always feel and think that maybe my panorama of Kokarnag is something which is special to me, and so it's everywhere. Everybody's panorama, everybody's perspective is special. But our today's guest hails from a village from Kokarnag. Our today's esteemed guest, who has gone into we are in the Caribbean and the Western universities, and had the great name for the country and himself, by work of his hard work, intelligence, and of course his genes from Kashmir. So he hails from that village. So we are going to know about this Hangul Kund. What is it all about? What is Kokarnag are about? Where probably he had studied in his schools, and then the degree college Anantnag. We had a show on Anantnag, but today we are going to have a different perspective from Professor Saab's a historian's point of view, a geography from the historian's point of view, and then from Kokarnag, and we're going to talk about Kashmir University, and then many more things all about his life, and especially the subject, today's subject, that is the Indian diaspora in the Caribbean. So, without wasting much of the time, I think this is a great moment to invite him into the studio with great reverence and respects and affection. Our native son from Kashmir, the great professor, great vice chancellor, administrator, author, also a poet. I've forgotten his poetry. We'll be talking about his poetry at the end. And administrator, scholar, Sri Ratanlal Hangloo Sahab, Professor Ratanlal Hangloo. Hangloo Sahab, you're welcome into the 100-second Sheetalnath Conversation show. It's a great honor to have you with me on Sheetalnath Conversations.
Let me first of all say namaskar to all our viewers and special namaskar to Shri Jigal Kolji, who has been doing a great service to the community by running these shows and with immense amount of his fortitude and perseverance. Jugalji has really sort of put together the bits and pieces of this civilization that has really flickered after 1919 to so sparsely into various parts of the world. I also register my condolence for the great son of Kashmir, Shri Pran Kishore Kaul, the Major General whom we have lost today. May his soul rest in peace. With these words, in fact, I would like to start with a couplet from my own poetry.
Right.
What happened
Yeah.
in 1990 before we go deeper into the other details of Kashmir? I have a poetry book. In fact, there are a couple of books, but one of the book it says about the Azadi in Kashmir. And the
Oh,
couplet reads, ये कितनी देर में इतना अंधेरा हो गया, कदीमी बस्तियां उजड़ी हुए सुनसान गांवों भी, शहर
ah,
वीरां पड़ा लुटकर हुआ खंडहर बसेरा भी.
ah,
सियासी आड़ लेकर कुछ जवानों ने बदल डाला अदब का खास चेहरा और वो कश्मीर सो गया. It
that's so what.
really pains
That's
one that the Kashmir, Kashmiriyat and the Kashmiri Pandits, who
yeah.
significantly contributed to the civilizations of the world right from 3000 BC till date, is moving from
Professor sir,
place to place to place by dint of this 1990 crisis. Yes,
Professor,
you want to.
we'll come to that. We'll come to that in our chronological place. And first of all, as per the paradigm and structure of this program, we take our guest conversationalist, and of course, we are very grateful that a personality like yours was started from Hangul Kund and traveled across Kashmir and knows Kashmir from a perspective of a historian, its geography from the perspective of its culture, its tradition, being a Kashmiri Pandit himself, a civilization 5,000 years old. So I would like you to just let's first of all have wings and fly down to Hangul Kund and Kokarnag and then the degree college Anantnag. Then we later on come to the all aspects
Yes,
because you are an
right.
encyclopedia, a big
Perfectly.
ocean of knowledge.
Perfectly all right.
So we have to somewhere down the line paddle our boat in some bay and then slowly, gradually start moving.
Perfectly all right. You see, I belong to a very small village which had only 47 houses at Hangalgund. Hangalgund has a history, if we first of all say where from Hangalgund was created and why the word Hangalgund stuck to this village, why the village is named after Hangalgund.
Right.
47 houses of Hindus, and it was surrounded by a large Muslim brethren, no doubt. There are different stories. People say that, the deer was being sort of reared in these woods, and therefore Hangalgund is named as Hangalgund. But as I understand it, after little research also, you see, my grandmother used to tell me that basically we have come from Pulwama and we stayed in Hangalgund later because the ancestor of our family is basically Merzakak, who is a Bhakti saint. Merzakak
Merzakak,
and
yes.
Dilaram were the two brothers. Yes, Merzakak and Dilaram were two brothers. Merzakak became saint and did not marry, and Dilaram married. My line comes from Dilaram directly. It could
Hare.
be 20th generation or so, because it was 18th century that Dilaram appeared in Hangalgund. We have basically, because there is a sort of pratima, an image of a Devi which is known as Hingla Devi, that was created in Hangalkund out of a large stone slab, in fact. Basic problem is that we have migrated from Hinglaj, maybe ancient times. And
Hinglaj.
Hinglaj, you see, there was a Devi temple in Hinglaj, therefore we also recreated that temple in Hangalkund. The way after migration to Jammu, people have recreated Tulumula, they have recreated Marthan, they have recreated Upshumbu and many other places in different cities as such. It happens when
Right.
the population gets uprooted and moves to other places. So this is the history of the village that I belonged to. And in that village, we did not have initially, there was no schooling at all. I still remember that I was uh, put to Pathshala. Pathshala was a place where Hindi and Sanskrit at that point of time was taught in early 60s. And in that Pathshala, the book, only one book which was available to us was known as Adarshmala, where you had
Other.
certain Hindi songs and so on. So Adarshmala, we were taught uh, maybe more than couple of months. And after that, we were informed that there is a school going to come up in Bidar. Bidar is another half a kilometer away from Hangalgund towards when we go to Kukarnar. And we were admitted to that school Bidar. I still remember the first day when I went to that school, I tried to hid myself behind the door till my grandma distributed shirini, and
Ah,
peanuts among the students, and I was welcomed there. That was the tradition those days, in fact. And we had simple space, mud space to sit down on the ground and like that. I remember one of the greatest teachers who admitted there, Chunilal, but he passed away a couple of years back from Shangas Naugam. After that, in fact, again after 7 8 months, we were told no. No, it is the period when Bakshi Sahab was ruling Kashmir and spending the center's money to evolve some institutions and so on. Ultimately, Hangalgund
Exorbitant
was given
spend.
a primary school, and we were again asked to move back to Hangalgund. So it is in Hangalgund that I completed up to fifth class, and sixth class I had to go to Kukarnag, which was high school at that point of time. It was
Oh,
couple of kilometers away from my place, and we had to go on foot. And I remember people used to come early morning, even after you know traveling for 15 20 kilometers from as far as Akingam, as far as Butsu, so many other
Akingo.
places, or Larnu or Daksum. People would come start so early to be there by 10 o'clock and so on. And there my high schooling took place, in fact, in Kukarnag. It was a wonderful place, a great tourist resort, a great center of attraction, in fact, for tourists and so on. So there I studied up to 10th class. In fact, in ninth class I had an inclination, my parents also had an inclination, that I should study science, but there was no teacher to give tuition for that. I never went to any tuition at all. So there was no
Okay.
tuition available, and after 3 days I returned those chemistry book, in fact,
Oh,
and went to the class of arts, I can say, we say these days social sciences and so on. So I went to back to that class and studied history, geography, mathematics, and so on. In mathematics, I was really very poor because it did require a tuition at that point of time. And my mathematics also was slightly spoiled by my grandmother, because she would say there are five pigeons on one branch of the tree, and there are 200 couples, and how many that was a sort of confusing kind of mathematics that was taught those days to children in the villages and so on.
oh,
So
I see.
the instruction medium was completely Urdu at that point of time. In some places, it was my wife studies. In fact, she said that in their school at Kul Nurwa, which is the last village in Kulgam side, that there it used to be a medium of instruction Persian those days. Somehow,
Persian.
after completing the schooling, I was sent to the college. We are basically, at that point of time, we were nine children in our family. We are five sisters and four brothers, a large
Oh,
family, and therefore the resources were very limited, because my father was simply a peasant. He was not a officer or matriculate and so on, because
yeah.
his father had died. My grandfather had died at the age of 40, leaving behind some children and family. So therefore he could not study at all. But we had a piece of land. Even today, I know how to do agriculture. In Kashmiri, we say
Really.
Nandakaranya, all these things. I'm completely familiar with all those tasks, because we used to do side by side all these tasks. And in 71, I joined, I remember, government degree college at Khanabal. Since
Hannibal.
uh, I was not good at maths, I went to the principal's room and asking for the small clerk who was there. In fact, I asked him, I said, is it necessary that we have to take maths also here? He said, no, no, no. You don't have to study maths if you study arts. So I took political science, which was referred as civics those days in PUC, history, Hindi,
Civics.
and English. Yes, civics, in fact, yeah. But it's a part of political science, I would say, and did my BA there. In fact, I improved in BA. I got almost, I would say, of course, mathematically, it was not a first division at all, but second division. Then I
Okay.
joined MA history, but I was fascinated because in my house there were some law books, there were some books on agriculture, which maybe some of my grand uncles or others must have left there. So I was fascinated by those books. There used to be a book called Qisas Hind, which was a history book in Urdu, very petty history book, I would say, but it fascinated
Okay.
me very much. Therefore, I decided that I should, if I do MA, I should do MA in history. And I did MA in history. When I was admitted to MA in history, initially I had some interest in doing law, but I was ultimately admitted to history department in the month of December. In fact, I remember 1975 December, the admissions took place. It was there that I discovered that if we want to study earlier history of India or Kashmir, I must know Persian language. So I utilized that winter in doing additional BA in Persian. And in March, I appeared for the exam and passed that, just pass Persian. And then I continued with my history subject at Kashmir University. In Kashmir University, I found there were wonderful teachers. In fact, one of my great teachers, I would say, who treat me just like his son, was Professor Zadal Zindalal Jala from Ranavari.
Zindalal Jala.
And one of the Muslim teachers, Professor Muhammad Isaac Khan, he was from Magar Malbagh, Srinagar. Both of them extended a little patronage to me because I was little hardworking. I always believed that every achievement begins with desire, because I remember
Mm.
my mother used to often tell me that even if you become a Sikh Avenger, do it wholeheartedly. I'm translating her words into English. She was not a sort of well read, and but this is what she would say, that even if you become a Sikh Avenger, two things she taught me. In fact, at that point of time, one was that you should do everything you do it wholeheartedly, even if you have to eat meals, do it with great desire. You know,
That's
great enthusiasm.
wonderful.
And the second thing she taught was, she would often say that if you have to go anywhere, be there before the time. That even if you are taken for a begar, be there for 2 hours before, so that you get less load to carry. These are the words which rankle in my mind. So I did my all hard work, in fact, and ultimately I got first class first those days. There was no gold medal as such. It had not been instituted in
Certificate.
history department. I got first class first in my previous. That encouraged me further, and ultimately I got first class first after MA final also. Lots of students came forward to help me during my MA, and I got a scholarship of 50 rupees per year, I think it was. After that, after doing, in fact, it was at Professor Zadal Jala's residence that I came to know. When one of the teacher from Meerut came to meet him, they talked about JNU, JNU, JNU. After the professor left, you'll excuse me. So after
Yeah,
the
please,
teacher left,
please
in
come.
fact, I asked Professor Jala, what is this JNU? He said there's a university, Jawaharlal Nehru University in Delhi, which is considered to be one of the upcoming institutions in our country.
Hmm.
Those days, there was no websites and other things. Then I inquired about the address from one of my senior friends who also used to come to Jala Sahab. His name was Upinder Zutshi.
Oh,
And R.L. Wali, who had studied there as PhDs. In fact, they were PhD scholars there. Somehow, when they gave me an address, I wrote to History Center head of department that time, who was the chairperson. He happened to be Sarupalli Gopal, the son of Professor Radhakrishnan, who wrote me a postcard saying,
Arey,
at that
wonderful.
point of time, in the month of June, you will get an application. You apply and do it. You have to qualify, and then you can be admitted. In my MA, I had done a dissertation on Muhammadan folk, which had taught me the techniques of research, for going further, in fact. So ultimately, in 1978, July, in fact, when I was free from my completely after completion of my MA, I applied to JNU in the month of June. We had a lot of tough time because we had to come from villages. As I said, the resource problem was always there, even though the fee was 600, but even that 600 was not forthcoming. It was very difficult to, garner
Very
that
difficult.
money those days. Uh, I went to JNU and uh, joined JNU. There were a lot of good people with me. I remember Nandita Haksar, Pupian Haksar's daughter. She happened to be my class fellow. Many other good
Nandita.
friends were in that, from whom I learned. When I went to JNU, people would directly go to the research. But what I decided, I thought I have come from a small university. I must see what is being taught in MA days also, in classroom. So I used to go both to MPhil PhD classroom as well as to MA classroom to sort of upgrade and update my knowledge about different. I discovered that there were lots of books which I had not read by the time, which I should have done in MA, but I did not come. They did not come to my notice at MA level. Somehow I studied, and in MPhil I got a rear grade. The interesting story happened that Kashmir University invited me that there is a vacancy for 2 years. Why don't you come? Later we will confirm you if the
Hmm.
vacancy is there, and you come. I came back. I kept myself registered for PhD after doing MPhil, and in MPhil also I got a rear grade. The certificate mentions that this grade is given, A grade is given to a rear student. In fact, I still have that certificate with me. And then I joined Kashmir University for 2 years with the expectation that I would be confirmed. I was interviewed, for again extending my lien and so on. But in the meantime, there was some politics, as it used to often happen, that Kashmir University preferred a student who had three third classes and not me.
That's an
In
old story. That's
September
a very common story.
1982, in a huff, I left Kashmir University in 82. Even though my students made, those whom I taught made a great mark and they appreciate my teaching till date, in fact. I left and went to JNU back and joined as a PhD scholar in 1982. I got my PhD. And in 1983, I was appointed as a visiting scholar in Center for Historical Studies, JNU, where I had to teach and do my postdoctorate. But in 1984 September, I got selected for Northeastern Hill University, where Professor R.L. had already taught. My senior mentor, I would say, and a great friend. He is no more. Uh, so I joined there as an assistant professor, and after 3 months, 3 years and 9 months, I shifted to Hyderabad University, where I became associate professor and subsequently became a professor at Hyderabad University and concentrated on my work, on my publication. I remember Professor S. Gopal telling me one day that when we used to meet, and my great teacher with whom I did PhD, Professor Harman Smukhya, he would always say that criticism grows knowledge, and you publish or perish. You publish the quality uh, articles and do work this way. So I concentrated on my work and went on publishing very good articles which were accepted and critiqued by various great scholars, and they allowed me to learn further and to improve the quality of my research and so on. uh, at that point of time, my first work actually was rural economy of Kashmir, because being a peasant, it was always fascinating to explore my background and so on. So that book did a lot of rounds. In fact, agrarian system. It's again being published by a publisher in Delhi and London. Now again being republished, because after doing that work uh, in Hyderabad, when I completed it, in fact, uh, I was given fellowship by Germany for teaching purpose as well as for research. And that was the DAD fellowship, which was generally given to social scientists, but as a social scientist, I got it. And I did some good work on that after doing that fellowship, came back. It was after a few years that Peter Levoy, one of the top most scholars as well as administrators in US administration, you know came to Chennai to deliver a lecture, and there was an international seminar where I was asked to speak, but my speech was last of all. When I spoke on Kashmir and history and other aspects, it was rated as very high, lecture. Not that I have megalomania about me, but just everybody appreciated that lecture very much. And I remember after 6 months, my mother had passed away. After 6 months, the same Peter Levoy and the American government wrote to me that generally we select senior Fulbright after interview, after selection process, and so on. But we are conferring on you this, senior Fulbright. You come, and I was admitted to Delaware University for a senior Fulbright. I did some good work on terrorism in South Asia. At that point of time, I can imagine this. Present Secretary of State of America, Bill Clinton, is a good friend. In fact, we met, we have lots of pictures together and all that those days, because he was senior
Mm.
PS to senior Bush, I think, when the Iraq war took place, because they were correcting opinions and
Bush
discussing with us.
Senior,
So
yeah.
that was. I have the problem. I am deviating. I come back to the question, and I
Uh,
continued at Hyderabad University. Yes.
yes, yes. Actually, first of all, I would like to say, a person, a flower, which somewhere that sprouted in Hangalkund and started blooming and knowing the world, and gradually excelling in the academics. And he got a particular. He was. You are very lucky that you got to know that you have to be an historian at the end. So, what was the transition? I'm transition from Kashmir, a legacy, to an academician in Hyderabad or in JNU? What was the differentiation as an intellectually saying, or as a historian? How did you find this? Uh, this
Uh,
difference in
ye-
in the, in the texture, in the understanding. Yeah.
you, you see, in fact, it was very, very interesting and also full of certain complexities. Because when we look at the life in the villages, for example, your education those days, it was a necessity, but somehow because of small minds, everybody had a job in mind. You know
Mhm.
that whether it would fetch a job or not, reading history was not considered to be very fetching, because people had started studying science at that point of time in
Science
villages.
was a
That
common,
was one.
common.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that was one difficulty. I remember that we had to confront, and we had to say that we would certainly become one day achievers in this field when we devote ourselves very nicely to this aspect. That
You
was
had
one
that
thing.
wisdom.
Second thing is,
Mm.
it also destroyed one of the notions which I came to know, and which all of us. You see, we have one of the important narratives in Kashmir, which is being blown out of proportion, saying that all Kashmiri Pandits, that they were a ruling clan and so on. Let me
Yeah,
frankly tell you,
that's a
you
misnomer.
know, if you travel from Anantnag up to Kukarnak, which is more than 20 kilometers distance, travel to every village. I did not find more than a couple of people who had passed matric up my father's age. I was always, this question was rankling in my mind, that how come Pandits were ruling, because if there's not a single soul in the entire Tehsil who has passed matric of my father's age, for example. Now, who was ruling then, in fact, you can
And even
imagine.
in
That
agrarian, in an agrarian side, when we brandicize it, when we agrarian side, we have very small holdings in the villages, five
very
canal, four
small.
canal,
We-
like
You
that.
see, and that entire, the 5 canal, 4 canal, we had 12 canals of land, 24 canals, out of which 12 canals went to the Kashtakars, and we were left with 12, and those 12 had to be distributed with the uncles and others and so on. So it was very little, land holding. It was not a big land holding. And out of that, in most of the Kandi elakas, from Anantnag upwards,
Yeah,
Shupian
that's right.
upwards, Kulgam
Chopin
upwards, it
upwards.
was all Kandi elaka. We find that the produce was very poor. We are talking of,
I,
for
I
example, Hindu Muslim relationships, for example. That would be really fascinating, because every time something happened, the Muslims, our brethren, would come in large numbers and go to a particular astan, Allah Akbar, and so on, and come back. Some of the Hindus would also join them. I remember when Al Aqsa Massacre was first time close to them, and people started, but history, it started going there in a procession and coming back. Then people would ask questions, hey, what happened actually? But I had to, as a historian, I realized, and I was explaining people that, look here, when these things are happening, Islam is an international religion. They are responding to something outside Kashmir. They are not responding in Kashmir. But if you look at the functional Islam, I would always say to my all, I have a book on, approaching Islam also. I would
yeah, yeah, I
always say
know.
that Islam has, we accept that Ummat and all that, what people say, but it has a region specific element in it everywhere. I'll give a small example. In my neighborhood, there used to be a small tailor who was considered
Mm.
to be a Sufi type, very honest person. His name was
Simple
Khalik
man.
Khan. He had two sons. One of them would go to earn bread in Punjab as a labor, the other would attend to family needs. And Khalik Khan used to stitch small, small clothes and village, not very commercial type and all that. Khalik Khan put up some money and made a mud hut and said that it is my mosque, where on Friday he would give, look at it, he would, pray in that mosque on Friday, but he would disallow others not to come into that mosque, because he would say that this is my personal, you know
They
and
understood
look at the
that
kind
this
of
is a
Islam
personal communion
those
between
days, in
God and
fact.
the man.
Yes, absolutely. And if you travel to that entire area, I can tell you there was not a single family in that area which had a Quran, or if you talk of Hindu family having a Gita. You see, this religion, it was a post-colonial phenomenon. We all Muslims, we all Hindus, we all
No, it
Christians.
was
But
created
that
by the
feeling was
consciousness,
that
religious
feeling was
consciousness
not,
came later.
absolutely, that
And
feeling was not there at
one
all.
one thing
Yes,
more, Anglo
yes,
Sahib, I would like
please.
to substantiate what you said about Kashmiri Pandits. You must have read Lawrence. Though I feel
Yes.
Lawrence has written somewhere. I want to have a lecture on Lawrence books as well one day. I will conduct a very wonderful conversation on these particular authors. We talk about them, but we don't read the book. We don't know anything about them. He had said that only about Kashmiri. There was a in those times there was a complaint to Maharaja that Kashmiri Pandits, they are playing a very dubious role with the common masses. Then in his statement, in his report, he had written that out of 11 tahsildars in Kashmir, only one Tahsildar is a Kashmiri Pandit. The rest of the 10 Tahsildars are from either from Punjab or from other terrains. They don't belong to Kashmiri Pandit community. So this fallacy, even within ourselves and in the other Kashmiris or non-Kashmiris, which think that we were the elite class in Kashmir. I think this is something which is a misnomer, which I substantiate what you said. Yeah.
Yeah,
So you were,
I
we are
have,
talking
I
about.
have from,
I also say one thing because in Kashmir, as you very rightly said, there was not this differentiation because whenever I went to Kashmir as a theater critic, I was in a seminar once and somebody showed some kind of even. I mean, I know him very well, and that is Motilal Kemu Saab. He wrote a play and
oh,
Kyatham
I,
Pather, and he
I know
started.
him.
I'm a theater critic. I told him one thing: the imagery, Raviji, what you are placing here, it didn't exist in Kashmir because in summer vacations I used to go to one of my aunt who used to live in the village. I used to go there local school. My mom used to tell me go to the local school. I used to do the plays of Bhagat Singh, talk about Indian nationalism, the patriotical
Right,
song. They were
right,
all
right.
cheer. There was not a single opposition there, even in Kashmiri Muslims. So that's why I agree what you
Absolutely,
said. Yeah.
absolutely. You see, this regional specificity was nowhere, both about the Hindus as well as if we compare Hindu of that time to the mainland Hindu also. There was a regional, we had a regional specificity because we have been for hundreds and thousands of years as Buddhists also. All people, including Muslims, for example. The recitation of Auradi Fatiha, which is read in mosques early morning. Sallallahu Alaihi Ya Rasulallah, when it is read in a chorus, which is a Buddhist practice. We have been,
It's
I
a
can,
basically,
if you look at, there is a book called Tariq Sayyid Ali, the first Persian history which was written in Kashmir. Can you imagine the author is giving a lot of discourse? I have the book here. If you read manuscript, I have, in fact, the author says in one of the Sayyid says to the other one, says that, look here, they have accepted Islam, but they are still reading the new, worshipping in a musical form. He says even this is enough if they have accepted Islam.
even
So
for that
therefore there
matter,
were regional specificities which have crept into all religions everywhere. In fact, that was not specific to Kashmir alone,
so much.
but this is true. And
I
regarding
would.
the, this element of people, in fact, working in Dogra administration, I have gone through Mohafiz Khana record. I have gone through all records. The two people who held a large amount of land apart from the Maharaja and his Diwan, it was
Diwan
Sham
Badrinath.
Sundarlal Dar in Srinagar and Ahmad Shah. No other Hindu was holding it. Mia, as you said very rightly, the Mia Rajputs from Punjab were trusted by Maharaja more than the local people. They were not there in large numbers. There were only few, in that.
They were doing the menial
Anyway,
jobs, small
I,
jobs, as they used to do in the
yeah,
Afghan rule, as
absolutely.
they used to do in the foreign rule. Yeah.
Yes, yes,
Anyway,
yes,
I mean,
yes.
let's slightly come out of this. And what I was talking about, Hangloo Sahab, was, I mean, this transition from Kashmir to Jawaharlal Nehru University. And naturally, you don't live in a university, you live in the universe around as well. As a student, I think it's the most
Right.
impressionate mind because you were in
Yes,
Delhi, and
yes.
Delhi in those times, I don't know which year you're talking about. So I want this a parity, this comparison slightly from your perspective, how it was
You
academically,
see,
as
uh,
socially. Yeah,
yes. Yeah, you see, technically, I would say basically those days we did not have, for example, if you look at the services, transport services,
right,
or
sir.
the level of mobility was very less, and transport services were not so much available. I remember, a bus going to our place, the last bus that used to leave Anantnag for Kukarnag was at 6 p.m. After that, we had no transport. And if we were held in the city, then we would go on foot to Kukarnag or to our village and so on. Same thing was for coming also. Sometimes we did not have a better transport or transport as such, in fact, for a long period of time, sometimes in winter months and so on, if you had to leave it. So this transition going to JNU was opening one's mind. because JNU, you would meet the students from all across the globe, not only from India, but various other parts of the world also. And the perspective of perceiving human society was certainly providing a kind of what we call analytical widening. That you come from a
Yes.
small place, small village, but once you enter a university, you interact with so many people. You have wonderful library to learn about things from various nations, various countries, and so on. And you learn about the ethics. In fact, I would say you learned about the social profiling of people. In fact, you know so many things you learn there. In fact, I should say I really thank JNU because it opened our eyes to the wider world, which was not possible in Kashmir at all. So that gave a lot of great confidence to a person like me, to go ahead with one's life despite all difficulties and so on.
And there is a very, I mean, stance, a kind of a, I mean, it is being said commonly nowadays that the JNU academia, the JNU academician, they are mostly have a leftist bent of mind, and they are, although we have our honorable minister Sitaraman from there, and we have this our foreign minister from there, and we had many wonderful people who could never be, I mean, said to be in the leftist leaning. Tell us something about this culture of leftism. Was there in your time as well? Which was the year in JNU where you were in JNU?
You see, in fact, it was hub of leftism. There is no doubt about that.
Okay.
There's no doubt because, and in the hub of leftism, let me also tell you, the stalwarts, all of them, were not in various other centers. You see, if you go to SIS, School
Hmm.
of International Studies, there were a couple of people who were Marxists, known Marxists, Amal Sondi or somebody else, for example.
Die hard
If you
marks.
go to languages, one Namvar Singh would be there and Professor Hassan would be there in Urdu and Namvar Singh in Hindi, for example. But if you would go to History Center, let me
Hmm.
frankly tell you, we had 34 teachers, all the 34 were leftists. There's no doubt about it. But leftism, according to them, did not mean that they would
What is being
interfere with my thinking. What I would write or what I perceive as reality, they would correct it, but they would not really give you, a kind of a dose that
servers?
you put it this specs and look through. Leftism basically up there was academic leftism is that if our vision is widened to see the perspective. For example, if I ask a simple question, how do we,
Hmm.
as you very rightly and very intelligently, I would say, Jugalji, the way you said transition, for example, if I have to see the transition of history from ancient times to modern times, now how people explain, let me frankly tell you, no historian except these were in a position to explain this transition when, first of all, the book of D.D. Kosambi came in, Ancient Culture came. And when we were taught in that book gave the theory that, look here, it's mode of production that leads to transition, which you would believe today also. I would say,
Hmm.
there is nothing wrong in that kind of academic left in the
No,
sense,
no.
like, for example, if I say, how does a particular age succeed to the earlier age? How did we become modern from ancient and medieval? We became modern because our technology changed, because our space increased,
Agrarian to
our
industry we came.
in
Hmm.
labor
Yeah.
labor input multiplied, and it provides a kind of transition, modernity. You see, when technology came in, for example, when technology came in large measure, I give you one example. You see, in European parlance, for example, in European villages, if you look at, a water mill was being run by 500 people in feudalism. But when air power, mill, not water mill, sorry, mill was run by 500 people, but one water power and air as a power was invented and discovered and utilized for running the mill. It was run by one person. 499 people became free. So our condition was rather far more worse. If we look at our villages, I look at my village, for example, people did not have resources at all those days. There was, religion was a last domain to discuss those days. In fact, people would not, it was something which was very personal to people. I still
Yes, sir.
remember
It was
the
personal in Kashmir.
Hindus
I
and
remember.
Muslims would throng around shrines together. What had happened in 14th century, that's a history. There's no doubt about what happened. For example, I
That's a
give you
different subject.
one example. I
So,
give you, you see,
mhm.
when for example, one example I give you, when Mongols came, the Mongols raped thousands of Kashmiri women irrespective of the region, and took them and put them into harems. That was the time when Laleshwari was living. I can show you the evidence from Buddhist texts, because Mongols were, they were all Mongol
Yeah,
shamanites. Of course, they were not
Laleshwari was
Muslims at all. But
they were not Muslims.
yeah, so
No,
this is
but
what
one
happened.
thing is
I'm
there.
leaving aside the 14th century, but coming to modern period, that time when I was living, even that time it was very peaceful. There was cordial, harmonious relationship between the communities and so on. But suddenly we find that basically, as many of my friends were also associated with, for example, Jamaat Islami, we found that in Kashmir of those days, we used to have, for you said Kemu Saab was there. He knows culture much better than anybody else. There's
No,
no
no, I
doubt
know.
about it.
Yes,
Look at, for
yes.
example, we used to have during uh, seed sowing season, say between April and early May, mid April and early May, we used to have in Kashmir Urs. That was called a Jishn in Kashmiri. And lots of
Course,
people
yes.
from villages would come. There would be Mela, there would be some activity. But remember, at that point of time, those who play on this Shehnai and all that, what we say Kanyul in Kashmiri, for example,
Manual.
in our village, nearby village, they would put their houses very sacredly. They would not eat meat those days, and they
Mhm.
would go and wear a clean dress, which was traditional jama kind of thing. And then they would, recite, which nobody could. I think Kyomusab and others, they should try to discover that. I tell my
Kemushab has
friend
left
MK
this
Rana,
world.
my
He
close
has
friend.
left this world now.
I,
Yeah.
I tell MK Rana, my friend, in fact, yesterday also we were talking. I tell him often that you better explore. I can give you a lot of information on this. You better explore why the gestion was taking place. But when Jamaat Islami's influence increased, they found it anti Islamic and so on. They immediately shelved all these things. The gestion stopped in localities. And gestion
Actually,
was
all
not
this,
simply a commercial fate, it was bringing together communities,
it was a
critiquing the government
cultural,
at that point of
purpose.
time. It was a
Cultural.
cultural milieu, in fact, a cultural function and cultural occasion for all these things. But it
Indeed,
all
nowadays
stopped, in
we
fact.
are
So,
nowadays all the
yeah,
intellectuals, whether from theater, academia, all the people, they write in a bipolar way. They approach in a bipolar way. They forget about the 200 years of Shastrat music, the Sufi music, Sufi Shiva music, Shiva Shakti music, the Rishi Parampara. They
yes.
all forget about it. That's for another day. Ahlusa, we'll talk about more about now your JNU. Firstly, let's go to the Hyderabad. The maximum time you served as a professor of history in the Central University, Hyderabad.
Hyderabad Central,
And in between,
yes, Hyderabad Central
yeah,
University.
tell us
Yeah.
something about
I
that
served
period.
at Hyderabad University and did produce large. That gave me an opportunity to know South Indian history also better, because I was asked to supervise a large number of students who are now directors, professors, and all that, and some of them about to retire. One of them has become vice chancellor also recently, and so
Okay.
many of these people, in fact, were working on different themes. I tried to sort of make a difference because I moved away from the traditional history and started asking students, why not we study history of science and technology? Why not we study
Yes.
history of hygiene? That's where I was able to make a little mark, because I moved away from those conventional aspects of war, Vijayanagar Empire, or rulers and so on. The questions of gender, the questions of women, the questions of marginalized communities, agrarian question, peasant, families, even the role of religion in polity, for example. I still remember I prepared a course once, how the Indian state in earlier times should be debated, because when we have present these jargons, ideologies, we generally used to some of the us assume that perhaps it's all modern. But when we go back to ancient times, we begin to see that it was basically right from ancient times these forces were there, of different nature. For example, singular ethnicity, that we all belong to one community, was the political ideology of the first state in Kashmir during Naga period. Later, we find that when Jundaras came in, when Udambaras came in, when various other cults came in, that singular ethnicity concept lost itself. And a new state began to sprout and so on. This helped me to understand the questions of state formation also when I studied Vijayanagara state, for example, Bahmani
Mm.
state, for example, or the Oham state in Assam when I was in Northeast. Those days I wrote a book called State in Medieval Kashmir. That state does not, state has a territory. It has an ideology. It has a type of legitimacy, for example. I wrote that book and one of the publisher in Delhi published it. Last year, in fact, couple of years before, in fact, during COVID, I was surprised that Francis and Taylor writes me from London that we are seriously interested in reproducing this book. And they did it. The book is
And
selling
what is
now
the periodic?
$204
Period? That's a wonderful
unaffordable
book. That's a
cost in
wonderful book.
London and other places.
That's a wonderful book. I
So
would like to go read.
this is
But
this.
what is the periodicity
Sure,
of
I'll send you.
this book? Periodicity
It
of
is
this book.
state in Medieval
Period.
Kashmir. Period is
Okay.
it runs from you go as far back as possible. I would say early BCs, in fact 200 BC. You can see.
That's
I'll
around
send you an e-copy.
Ashoka's time, 300
Oh,
BC. Ashoka came.
yes, absolutely, absolutely. I'll send you an e-copy of that. It will be fascinating if you read that with references and
I would like to.
footnotes.
Certainly,
Because
this
I
is something
studied
which
Mahatmya
interests
literature,
me.
Tantric literature for this, all these things,
Okay.
in fact. So that was the contribution in South because I did study the questions of state formation in South India. It's a very interesting subject which gives state formation is not a simply political history. It gives us a deep insight into culture, polity, ethnicity,
Tradition.
anthropological issues,
Oh,
economic issues, so many other things. That was a great contribution. I loved to teach, in fact, in JNU for a long time. In fact, when some of my teachers retired, I was given an opportunity that you come back to
mm,
JNU as a professor. But by the time my children had grown, and I had also set myself so nicely in, I would say, Andhra culture and Telugu, domain, that I thought that I should continue here only. It was from there
but
that I went as a senior Fulbright, dad scholar, and headed twice these chairs of Indian studies abroad and many other fellowships. Mother Teresa Award was given to me on education, and so many other things were offered. So I thought I better
Teluguans,
continue
I
my
am a
work there.
frequent visitor to Hyderabad, but Teluguans are the wonderful people. They are so nice,
Yeah,
so
you see,
straightforward,
I would say,
hardworking.
let me frankly tell you, I would say glory comes from daring to begin. You know, I'm
Yes.
supposed to always speak very frankly. I mean, when I travel entire South, if I am to characterize people, I would say Telugus are the best from this platform. Also, these are wonderful people, very enterprising, than a much more, sort of courageous and have a better degree of, enterprise than other communities are also good. We have Tamilian friends good, we have Kannadigas, we have Keralites, all of them are good. But
They're
when I
wonderful.
compare, there's a
Malayalis are
little
there.
degree.
Tamil.
Yes, Malayalis and all people are wonderful in our country. But
Malayalis
just a small degree can
a
be
bit
added that they are
precarious.
little more, yes, little
But
more
Malayalis
enterprising
are
and
very
so on.
nice to you, but
So
the day you
I,
say that you want to stay here, they become precarious. There's
yes,
something precariousness
absolutely.
in them, which I've observed. Yeah.
Absolutely. I
So
taught large number of, thousands of students there, and I guided nearly 50 students for MPhil PhD. 50 people, in fact, boys, girls, who are doing wonderful work in different places and so on. It was from
as a
there that I
historian,
was invited to be.
as a
Pardon?
historian, where do you place Vijayanagari? I'm not saying that because it is something which is connected with our legacy, the combined collective
Yes, yes, yes.
legacy.
You
So,
see,
where do
Vijayanagara
you place
state
Vijayanagari
actually,
in the contemporary regimes of the world, or in the South Asia?
in the contemporary regimes of the world, I can say Vijayanagar is really a wonderful empire at that point of time. Vijayanagar came into existence in 1336.
Hmm.
Interesting thing. It is in Vijayanagar Empire and Jonaraja's Rajtarangani in Kashmir.
Raj
You can
Tarangani
see the
edition.
connections that we find the word Hindu caste, a Hindu word, Hindu caste for Hindus for the first time. Jonaraja mentions it in Vijayanagar Empire. Krishnadev Raya, who was king, but he was also a great poet. Vijayanagar Empire is famous not only for putting unification of South India, but an important thing that the elements of state it grew and immense contribution in the field of economy, immense contribution in the field of, more particularly in the field of literature. That was wonderful thing. We find later Qutub Shahi rulers and others, they started copying Vijayanagar rulers in terms of,
Vijayanagari was kind of a
sense of sense of
Epitomize,
literature and like.
epitomize, and
Yes,
architecture,
absolutely,
architecture,
absolutely.
indigenous
Architecture, yes.
architecture.
Vijayanagar Empire, Hampi, for example, it's really wonderful. In fact, there's no
Humvees.
doubt about it. And even the innovation in polity. Krishnadev Raya, for example, he was loved by all public, a great ruler, in fact.
Mm. Yes, no doubt. You have written this book. I really want a synopsis about this. Inquiries of Medieval India. This has been a lot of talk about the intellectuals across the globe. Inquiries of
Hmm.
Medieval India, Religion, Society, Culture, and Polity. Tell us something about this book. I'm
Yes.
really much fascinated by the
Uh,
title itself.
you
Yeah.
see, I would love to show you the book also, if you allow me a minute.
Yes, yes, please, 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 Mara, please do it.
One second.
Actually, it's very difficult to contain his knowledge into one program, one conversation. But I'm trying, as a no, as an in my own amateurish way, not immature, amateurish way, to try to, I mean, thread everything which he has, which he possesses, into this one conversation, so that we understand how much work people do, the geniuses of
This
Kashmiris
is
wherever
this
they
is
travel, what they
actually
do.
this is the book. If I'm able to show you.
Yeah, it's a beautiful. आपने वो उसका architecture बहुत प्यारा.
Right,
The front page is the book is
right, right.
wonderful. Look is wonderful. Nice.
You see, this book pertains to, there are lots of debates about periodizing Indian history. You see, I want to give you one, if you have time, for example, when
Yes, yes,
Britishers
please.
came to British historians came to India, they had a purpose of dividing Indian society and ruling us. We
The
all say often they
Machiavellian.
divided us, but nobody knows how did they divide us. What did the British did? They said that ancient India was Hindu rule, medieval India was Muslim rule. Then modern should be Christian. No, they said modern is British. For the previous two
Modernist
periods, they used religious context.
religion. And the last one,
Religion.
they used as
Hindu
imperialism.
is a religion, Muslim is a religion, and the last period, modernity, which commenced with the coming of British as they perceive, they say
Hmm.
that this is British period, not Christian period, while as they were indulging in conversions also. So
They were
this was
enjoying.
the sense of periodization. And in this periodization, it played a havoc with Indian history, because not only this much, they said later that, look here, Hindu period was a golden period. Not that they
Hmm.
believed it was golden.
It
This
was
was a
politics.
kind of perception. They said it was a golden period. And when Muslims came, this was the anarchic period. They created anarchy. And then when
Hmm.
British came, because unless you say there's anarchy, you cannot say that there is an
Say
order.
that there's an
And in
order.
order to say this order, they say that order was established only by the British. When we came, we established order for their legitimational sake. So I subjected this entire debate, because in India, we, for example, we say, if you look at Kashmir history, for example,
Hmm.
all our sources from 14th century up to the end of 1877, almost beginning of Pratap Singh's rule in 1889, you find that all sources are in Persian from 15th century onwards. And then our land holding system, we have Akbar's reformation, then we have Lawrence's reformation in land. Do we accept that we became modern in 18th century when Afghans were killing us? And Afghans were
No.
often saying, Sarburidan Peshi Sangin Dilan Gulchidan Ast. That means it is easy to cut the head of a Kashmiri than to pluck
Kashmiri,
a flower
then
in
a
the
flower,
If
then
that
a
was
flower.
the level of exploitation, where is the question that
They were the
Kashmiris were
brutes.
modern?
They were the, yeah.
So I questioned this entire British debate and Indian debates in order to establish that periodization in India is not a monolith, is not universal. Some regions became little modern with the coming of British and after British. Some of them continue to remain down to 19th century as medieval, like Kashmir, for
It was
example,
it was just
Northeast, uh,
for their own employees, for
Himachal,
their people who used to come as a colonizers. It was for
upper reaches
arrangement
of
for them, not for the public.
absolutely upper reaches of Himachal Pradesh, UP, many other places which continuously continue to remain untouched by modernity up to almost 19th century. And this question of anarchic, whether it is anarchic or not, I brought these all debates into it. And there is first chapter that begins in this book that pertains to periodization in Indian history. How do I give my own method of how do we periodize Indian history? That is one of the important aspects in this when we talk about periodization in this history. Then second is India's contact with Central Asia. You see, I tell you one interesting thing.
Mhm.
Most of our Indian scholars and Kashmiri scholars, all I would say, they have studied only when they study India, they study up to Kashmir, from Kashmir to Kanyakumari and Gujarat to Nagaland or other places or Calcutta. When they study this history, they are not looking at the
Collaborative.
question of Aryans. You
Mhm.
see, we had lakhs of people who migrated from Central Asia and settled down in various parts of India. For example, right from 3000 BC, we have plentiful of it. Not only Aryans, so many others. You see, for example, in Kashmir, we had a ruler who killed all Buddhists, Meherkula. Meherkula was not a Kashmiri ruler. He was a Nephthalite. He was a Huna who came from Central Asia to mainland India. There he was chased. He came to Kashmir, threatened everybody, killed people, and established his rule, for example. So, second is contact is between India and Central Asia. What is
Mhm.
that India contributed in building India? And what is that Central Asia did in building or destroying? Because I always believe, my faith is always that India is nothing but India's institutions. If we build those institutions, India would be built. If we destroy those institutions, nation would be destroyed. So I have looked into this completely, a very very interesting picture that emerges in this uh, uh, period between from early period. It pertains to say 14th century, even going back to 14th century also at times when I trace these contacts. The third is tools of legitimacy in medieval India, case study of Delhi Sultanate. When we say Delhi Sultanate, we have a phobia that the rulers were very great. If you go to any
No,
museum, you'll see a big
that's a
sword shown
misnomer.
there. They
That's
will
a
say,
it is
"Oh,
it is even
you
spread
see,
by the Western
that is
historians and communist
that
historians
is
rather.
yes,
No, no.
Western and many of Indians also. You see, the
Communist
fellow
historians
was a
as well.
very weak fellow. For example, we
Harper,
have
Thapar,
people, we
and
have
this
seen
Habib.
these rulers. When we study them in this, I have established how people have sought legitimacy. I tell you one small example here. One of the Delhi sultans, when he would go to villages to astonish people with his power, they would first search for a lion, kill the lion. It was not ruler who would kill. The army would search for a lion, kill him, then get the tiger skin and spread it on some, branches of trees and all that. And nighttime make king travel into those localities to astonish people and tell them, look here, the king has just now killed this tiger, which was all false. The questions of
They created
legitimacy and ideology
the
have
fear
been
psychosis
exposed in this. That's why
coercion.
I say tools of seeking. Yes. And
Yeah,
then another aspect that I have studied in this at all India level, that is medieval Indian town as a clue to the state's perception of territoriality in India has not been studied at all.
that is known.
You see, the
That
concept
I
of
also agree.
territoriality in the sense, if I am renting a house, I organize the space as per my rule, not as per my landlord's rule in my room. Likewise, in India, the town is how towns in medieval times were built to divide Indian society. You see, I give you one small example. A
Please.
washerman's son comes when his ball or when he comes to play with the king's son in same compound they stay. His mother says, no, these are low people. These are washerman people. And we are high funda people. We are royalty. Don't go into their club and in their vicinity at all in the village. But
Absolutely.
all of them were located because the king has to get his clothes washed. He was not allowed to come in. But at the same time, his father would wash their clothes and come in. How these town lives were built to divide society, not to unify it, and what kind of perception territory holds in medieval times and modern times, that's also discussed in this. Then there is assimilation during the how did the process of assimilation start in the Mughal rule, because you have
Hmm.
large number of Rajputs, all Rajputs getting 15% of discount in payment of revenue, for example.
Hmm.
How they got assimilated into the Mughal kingdom, that Akbar was forced to go for Deen Ilahi, for example, or Sulikul policy and so on. Why did such kind of notions travel into medieval Indian polity? And then there is a question of Sufism, which is treated as a religious category. I have talked
It's not
about
all.
Sufism in medieval Deccan, politics and worship. How politics was mixed up with this worship. You see, you have, if you look at India, From 14th to 18th century, no part of India has witnessed a revolt, irrespective of the fact that exploitation of peasantry was immense. Because the two institutions of Bhakti and Sufism, they played havoc with India in terms of building pacifism and non-violent attitude. You see, when a Sufi tells to public, poverty is an essential condition of life. This is one of the principles of Sufis preaching in medieval times. Now, how would a
Enuri.
person go and revolt against the people and so on? He would not revolt because he's a Sufi
In fact,
and he
in fact, it
confirms to
started
this
from it
ideology.
started much earlier.
Similarly,
Hamlusab,
similarly,
it started
the
from
notions
Lord
of
Buddha itself.
notions of bhakti would
Ashoka.
notions of bhakti would also on the work on the minds of Hindus to keep them subjected to the ruler. I can give you one simple example. If you read Nilmat Purana, for example, in Nilmat
Mm,
Purana, the priest says to public, if you do not listen to the commands of the king, your crops will fail.
mm,
It's written in Nilmat Purana. If you do not listen to the commands of the king, your crops will fail. They have no connection. Disobedience to the king has no connection to the crops. But crops are dearer to the peasant, much dearer than his own children. So, therefore, a
that's right.
standing crop, you can imagine, should not get destroyed. Therefore, he bows down. And then, if you read the second line in that Purana, it says that your children and grandchildren will not share the heaven if you continue to be disobedient to the king. I mean, these are the things, the
I
legitimational
mean,
tools. So
that
this is
is
what I am characterizing
Hamlusab.
this.
Hamlusab, that is a story of entire mankind. That is a story of
Yeah,
entire monarchy system in the world. Even what you say is that Buddham Sharanam Gachani, Sangam Sharanam Gachami. When Ashoka the Great, he laid down those arms, he turned the complete
mm,
army into something like the idle, idle group of people, and they could not. They lost the
mm,
capacity to fight back. So that is also one aspect. I
absolutely.
mean, it is ingrained
Mm,
into the human psyche that the king
it
has
is.
always been attained and using the illegitimately the religion to, subjugate the people and
Mm.
divide the people and do the people.
This had
Anyway, I
not
can
been, you see,
understand.
when I am the first person to have added politics to worship. This was happening in practical life, but
Yeah,
historians would not they would teach it, treat it as like a holy cow, for example. Then I have also talked about the early state formation in Kashmir. Now, how did
yes,
the whole of
that's a
Kashmiri
great book.
polity came into
I would
existence
like to read
in
that.
medieval?
Yeah.
That book I will certainly send you. I would certainly,
Acha,
this is the
I will.
book, in fact.
Thanks, sir. Thanks a lot. Hamlo
Yes.
Sahab, I would like to now. I like to slightly propel ahead. First of all, I would like to say that I don't agree with V.S. Nepal's pessimistic theology on India, and I have here an Indian, a great Indian academician and historian who has gone into Caribbean and written this wonderful book, compiled this wonderful book, Indian Diaspora in Caribbean, Trinidad, Tobago, West Indies, whatever, all these islands. I don't know because for a common Kashmiri and a common Indian, we don't have a you know the picture. We can't assimilate a picture of Caribbean. So let us begin from the geography of Caribbean, then your visits to Caribbean, Caribbean islands, and your work there, as well as I would like before that, before going to the Caribbean area, I would like you to tell us something about Michigan University, at the Berlin University, the Sohane University, and this that Turkmenistan University where you served and where you did the guest lectures or you were. Tell us something about that assignment of yours and that work
Uh,
of
let
yours.
let me start with this Heidelberg University. You see, Heidelberg,
Edinburgh.
I was given a DAD fellowship
Yeah.
to teach and do little research on Silk Route, its connection, because Kashmir and Central Asia. So therefore, I did some work on that, which is published in French and German language. I
Oh,
have the book with me here. It is published in French and German language. They have published it. That large article, in fact, which is more than maybe 20,000 words above, with most authentic details. And I plan to write a book, Politics and Worship, on Silk Route also sometimes in future, which pertains
that
to
will
Great
be.
Game, because I have some of the drafts also gone through. And then when I was there, and you see, perhaps they may have impression earlier that perhaps I may not be that articulate, but when I participated some of the seminars, they gave me students to be conducted for research and as well as teaching. And I did teach different courses there in Germany. And Michigan, I delivered lectures on that time. India had become very hot, and I delivered lectures on South Asian polity and crisis. One of the paper, Pakistan, a nation in jeopardy, for example, when I lectured, that paper is published in London. I have a copy of the paper. What you find presently happening in Pakistan: poverty, misrule, weakening, failure of state. In
Yes.
2007 itself, 97 also, I have written about it, and 2007 a huge paper on this has come out in London, which I have predicted all these things. Not that I'm a priest, but I studied their history, you know, from their perspective and historians perspective, and tried to compare it, and found that the state was going to sort of fall apart, and it has no significance and political strength to sustain as a nation. That did This work was done in Michigan University. Then after that, as a Fulbright scholar in Delaware, I did some work again on South Asia and
Mm.
Kashmir also. In fact, I would like to certainly mention here, which the Home Minister of India also knows it more than sufficient. It was in 89, 13th July,
Okay.
1989, that I came to Kashmir to attend first birthday of my son. uh, and I wrote after going back to Hyderabad, I wrote a letter to the then Governor, General K.V. Krishan Rao, saying
KV
that
Krishna.
Kashmir, the words are there, the Kashmir is fast immersing in militancy. I will send you a Xerox of the letter. It is fast immersing in militancy. What are you going to do? These were the words. On 13th July 1989, 88 or 89, I'll check up and send you. And he writes me back on 22nd July. I know that you have done research on Kashmir, because he had read that agrarian statement, so on. Nothing would happen to Kashmir. After 3 months, Kishan Rao was removed, and he sends a word to me to come and meet him in Sainik Puri, where he gave me a good snack and tea with my wife, and discussed lots of things when Kashmir was boiling. So that was basically the work that I had done, and I had perceived that how things are going to happen. In fact, you can imagine, I picked up the family album when my family said in 88 itself, why you are taking these black and white pictures of old, from the family. I said something bad will happen.
Houses
This
and
is
other
called
places.
not land I
Yeah.
cannot take, house I cannot take. There were not sufficient clothes to take those days. We used to have only single dress or two at the most. So I said I
Mm.
can take these pictures with me because they are history. So that work was basically done in Michigan, and also during my senior Fulbright fellowship also. So that was the work which I did in this place, uh, US and other places also. Then I
Shahani.
was asked that I was asked that I should really head the chair of Indian studies by our foreign ministry in Trinidad and Tobago, because
Ah, that's wonderful.
we have had a large, component of population there. It was basically, can I continue with this Caribbean
Yes,
thing?
yes, please. Please, please. Mm.
Yes. So what happened actually in 2007 when I went, I was surprised to see my, luckily in Hyderabad, I had a student also from Caribbean. When I reached, he
Okay.
had become a teacher in one of the colleges. He took me around. Maharaj, his name was Maharaj. So he took
Mm.
me around. The very first day when I arrived, he took
Mm.
me to a place in one of the temples, which is the largest Hanuman temple. And what was surprising for me, but by the time in Kashmir, we had given up this SOG system, keeping of choti here
Bodhi.
among the men.
Brahmarudra.
When I reached
At
there, I
Brahmarudra,
found a
yeah.
person
Brahmarudra.
having a large choti, and
Mm.
accompanied by two of his young sons who also had this. I asked Maharaj, I want to talk to this fellow. I thought, is he so traditional? Where from this gentleman has come? And then Maharaj explains me that there are so many Hindu, we have more Hindu temples than India. So gradually I tried to understand the society by moving around in entire Caribbean. Caribbean region is just behind California if you cross the seas. So there
Yes.
also my job was to do research, but also teach regularly, in the sense 2 years, to understand the society. Then I discovered that basically it was in 1838, during colonial period, that Indians from various sections of society were given false promise that there is a lot of gold, there is a lot of sugar, so we take you and we bring you back with a lot of wealth by the Britishers. They were lured into this system and taken to British Guyana. And again in 1845, large number of Indians, thousands together, were taken by turns by Fatah al Razak. Was a ship which first went to Caribbeans along with Indian laborers. Their conditions after reaching Caribbean were very pathetic. It was far more worse than serfdom in Western European, agrarian system. Terribly worse when I studied, because their fifth, fourth generation was still living with the impressions that their earlier people had, left. You can imagine there is an example, one Abdur Rahman Khan, who was taken from Kanpur as an indentured labor. His mother says that I am going to die. My eyes have become completely, blind. I cannot see even if he comes back. But he was not allowed. There's a very pathetic history of these people. Finally, we find
And
a large number of Indians.
they were mostly the laborers who went into the British time. They were taken there for the for working in the
Indentured
field,
labor,
especially
yeah. Sugar
sugarcane
cultivation,
producing
sugar
sugar
cultivation,
cane, especially. Yeah.
sugar cultivation, yeah. And this stopped in 1920. But the last installment of these people went into 1917, of these indentured laborers. You see, they were given promise they would be brought back, but none of them was allowed to come back by Britishers. That was the pathetic, there they had to face the exploitation of British government on one side. On the other hand, they had to also
Local
confront the Africans. But one of
Africans.
the interesting thing that when you look at these people, Indians there, the Indian community, when you try to explore the entire system, you'll be surprised to know it's a great laboratory for Hinduism there. You see, we had total number of people was more than 90%. I think 85.9% was Hindu population there at one point of time. At that time,
And they were the Negroes,
14%
even
were
even
Muslim.
the Africans. They were Africans were also
Yeah, Indians were actually, Indian Hindus were 85.5%. 14% were
Indian.
Muslims along with the African Muslims and Indian Muslims. 1% was only Christian. By the time I went there in 2007, 34% out of this 85 had already become Christian.
Oh,
You see, there one of the finance minister who became prime minister also for some time and came and met me in Hyderabad. His name was originally, his parents had put his name as Dukh Haran.
Bukharan.
He was from a marginalized Dalit family from UP. His name was kept as Dukharan when I checked up his record. And when he had converted to Christianity, he was named as Winston Dukeran. They added Winston, and Dukharan becomes Dukeran.
Bukharan. That is how
So
they do
this
it
is how after
conveniently.
conversions. And then
Conversion
these
happened.
people had problems because now you see the fascinating aspect, there are so many interesting things, which we may have time perhaps. Uh,
Yeah, yeah,
you
we
see,
can
one of the
just go on if
fascinating
there are some.
aspect is that when we have the notion of partition in India, very dominant notion of Indian partition, Indian communalism. If you
Hmm.
go there, you don't find that notion of partition among the Hindus and Muslims of Caribbean, those who have gone
Hmm.
from India. I could see it, for example, on the day of Deepavali. We would find the Muslims and Hindus coming together, collecting funds from government and personal contributions and lighting all streets in Caribbean on Deepavali day. Or if a Muslim family has a function which they say hijab function, when the girl
Yeah.
becomes mature, there would be thousands of Hindus greeting them on that day there, and the function would not take place, hijab function, unless Hindus are there. This notion of partition and communalism is completely new to them, because they were not that time here when partition took place. They remember India, the India of pre-partition has frozen into their mind.
That's
They
what
had very
that's what that's
peculiar
what
notions.
that's what V.S. Naipaul was disgusted and disturbed with when he returned back
Absolutely.
India, and his expectation, his idealism about India of his
Yeah,
father, a grandfather, was not
right,
there. It was
right.
partitioned. There were the ghettos,
And
so it disturbed him a lot. Yeah.
we I remember having gone to one of the senior most family in the neighborhood of VS Nepal. I have visited his family. We have visited him. uh, when we sort of interacted with them, and I said, did anybody come from Kashmir also? They are supposed to
Mm.
be oral historians of Trinidad and Tobago. They said a large number of Kashmiris were also among those who came. A large number of Punjabis who are still there with different kinds of names available to them. But interesting aspect is there, these people did not have religious scriptures like Gita with them. Can you imagine? You must have seen when you go to UP villages during these Naumi days, when particularly before Dasera, when this Ram
Mm.
Katha is recited in pandals, different places. It has an
Yes.
ancient practice. Earlier, it was not on such tech with so much of technological support and pandal and all. Earlier, it was just in village people gathering, and somebody would, without mic, tell them about the story of Ramayana and so on in a musical chorus like Kathavachak and so on. So we
Mm.
find that since some people had remembered this story, there were Bengalis. If you talk to their elders and look at the history, their records in the archives at Trinidad, that record reveals that he was picked up from the port of Chennai. Now, the fellow could be
Oh,
from Kashmir. He must have been lured from here to Delhi, from Delhi to, because the ship would come to Chennai, ship would come to Bombay,
Chennai.
ship would come to
Okay.
Visakhapatnam, but not to Kashmir, Jammu, or Delhi and other places.
Because
So
ship, that was not a ship.
that was their history. And now you discover that, you see, there are Tamilians, there are Kannadigas, there are large number of Telugu people, there are North Indians, UP, Biharis immensely, Assamese also, Bengalis also. Now
And
imagine
they
an
celebrate.
interesting, you see, that's
They
what I'm
celebrate
coming to.
Diwali, and other festivals are
They
celebrated there.
celebrate all festivals. They celebrate more Hindu festivals than we have in India.
India.
You see, now, interesting, you find that they did not have scripture, but majority of the people from UP and Bihar, particularly from Bhojpur region, knew
Bhojpuri,
music and singing of
Avaji.
Ramayana. So what happened that Bengalis did not have any religious specificity. Tamilians forgot about their religious traditions. Karnataka, Telugus also forgot. Ramayana became their religion. If you go to any family, and every family, you will find harmonium and Ramayana. And you find them that this is the celebration of Ramayana is their national festival almost.
It's almost a national.
Everybody immersed in the culture. So it is
Irrespective of caste,
mainland.
creed, color, religion, they all come and celebrate
Exactly.
together.
Yes, it is Bhojpur basically, the Bhojpuri music and Bhojpuri area which predominated in terms of throwing up the blanket of Ramayana on all regions, Hindus, and they celebrate. They celebrate Deepavali, but not the way we do it in within the family. It's an affair of the community there. you know
Community affair. Get
they
together.
celebrate Shivratri, they do all these kinds of things, and even the small fasts like Ashtami, like that, and so on. You can imagine. Look here, I tell you another interesting example here. I met a gentleman who is from a Dalit background. He would admit that he came to Banaras, learned about the Panditai, he learned about the scripture and puja in Banaras, went back,
Okay.
he was a temple priest, he shifted to
Yes.
US. You see, Dalit background person who worked so hard. And if you go to some of the Kashmiri Pandit families also, he is performing as a priest on Shivratri and other places. He was telling me. And some of the Kashmiri families also, particularly in areas of New Jersey and so on. Now, Government of India facilitated coming up many people to India, gave them the training of priestly. The only country where you have Hanuman Chalisa from morning 7 o'clock up to night 10 o'clock going on, where
That's it.
specific radio stations and television stations are devoted to this. And when you
You
go to their temples, they're different thing. Their temples are not like temples like ours, where we go and matha take and sitting on the ground. No, there are, just you can see the Christian influence. There are chairs like churches, tables like churches, everything, and the high priest would
that's
recite
the
from
Western
there,
influence.
and then
Western
they will
influence,
go.
not the
Yeah,
Christian
this is
influence.
very
Yes.
fascinating. And
Yeah.
coming to VS Naipaul, I remember
I'll
Naipaul
just
said
before
that
that,
basically
I would like to ask one thing, Hangloo Saab. You kindly let's visualize these Caribbean islands, Trinidad, Tobago, and which areas you will include in that, the wholesome, the islands here around the
it's
area.
only around the area. It's only mostly two islands, Trinidad and Tobago, Maracas Valley,
Tobago and Trinidad.
which is
Yeah.
a beach area. Yeah.
Okay.
Trinidad Tobago with Boracay Valley, and then there are Shagwana is an area where large number of Hindus are dominating. Shagwana is basically named after what we call in Maharashtra Chavan. Chavan was pronounced as Shagwana.
Okay.
You know,
Shagwana.
likewise, for example, yeah, and Christian, we find that R is missing. It was written as Kishan. I remember, you see, I can tell you, I don't know whether it fits into your program or not. I was traveling to, Buenos Aires, and I got
There are
tired. We had to stay in Brazil for some time, Sao Paulo. On
so
the
cool.
one of the rail bridges in air bridges in Sao Paulo, I met a Indian. He could make out that I am, you can imagine, at least Indian, because me and my wife were talking. So he came along close by. I said, "What's your name?" He said, "I came from Caribbean and left Caribbean long back and settled down here. My name is Lachuman, Lachuman. That's how they write
Lakshman.
Lakshman." Yeah. You see, and these people made a history. You see, imagine going as indentured laborers, producing prime ministers, producing bureaucrats, academicians, Nobel laureate, and
No, I mean,
controlled that very much. But unfortunately, when the Africans took over, one Mr. Manning became the prime minister after that fellow Pandey, Vasdev Pandey. After him, when Manning became prime minister from African, he encouraged Syrians and Africans and Chinese, and
oh,
lots of kidnapping of millionaires and billionaires from India took place,
oh my
India
goodness.
among the Indians, which
It's
gave
like
a sort of
Uganda.
economically they were sort of weakened. But later, when that lady, that Visheshar lady, took over as prime minister, they again rejuvenated and like that. But it's a very fascinating laboratory to work, on our community there. In fact,
You were talking about
Kashmir
your visit to
also.
VS Naipaul. Yeah. Your
Yeah,
visit to VS
V.S.
Naipaul.
Naipaul, you see, we have met him. I still remember he said, when I asked him, that Ramayana has been a very dominant feature, in
Yeah.
Caribbean, and particularly whichever Hindu family we went, we found. He immediately showed me. He said, "Look here, this is the harmonium here also which we play, for the Ramayana and all that." He said Ramayana is a mirror of development and transformation among Trinidadian Hindus. For then I asked him, "Could you please explain it?" He said, "Look here. You see, for example, religion is something which our soul requires. Our mind requires knowledge. Food requires, if we have to physically sustain, we need food. If our intellectual sustenance, it needs knowledge. And if our soul has to sustain, we certainly need spiritual things. We need religion." As he would say, though I may have different views about it. But he said that there was no religious scripture available to us. We did not know beyond 50 years, 60 years. All these labor class people, they knew only Ramayana. And even large number of Brahmin class was also there, in fact, but not so well trained. He said all of them were subject to the job of a labor here. So therefore, what happened, that Ramayana became their scripture, religious
Hmm.
superior religious scripture, and provided that spiritual satisfaction to these people.
Solace.
That house, in fact, that's a
Solace
white
to the
painted
suffering.
elephant house, it's called. It is still there.
He
It's
is
still
basically
there.
his forefathers, his father's father. They're the Brahmin descendants of Brahmin who moved out to
Yes,
Trinidad. And
absolutely.
his
Yes,
first novel is very wonderful. First novel. I don't like his books on the India. It is about his pessimism,
right.
because of that image which broke, we had the ideal image of pre British rule in India. His forefathers. But afterwards, I really felt one thing, that his first novel, which was all around the year I was born in 60s, and it is a wonderful novel. It's certainly, if we divulge deep into that novel, travel deep into its genesis, we understand it's about his father, and it is his father searching for an identity, who came as a laborer to
You
this
see,
place,
yeah,
whose
it's a
forefathers,
very, very
and then they
important
wanted to build
question.
a house. They wanted to build a house, and house was an identity, yeah, of their
You see,
Brahminical ancestral. Yeah.
I would really say that suffering is not suffering unless we endure it. You see, when these Trinidadians, Indians were Trini Indians, they are called. When they were there in 1957, I think, when Nehru went after the partition was over, after freedom struggle was over, when Nehru went, these people had an expectation that he would take us back into different ships and all that. They did not know the agony of India, and their agony was well known to them. They were refused. some of them, British wanted to kill them. They put a tuberculosis virus into blankets and distributed those blankets to Indian population. Thousands of them died. After that, one of the important persons who's also a cross in the sense that his ancestry comes from China, but his mother's or father's side somebody from Trini Indian, Eric
Mm.
Williams, who became the first
Eric
Prime
Williams.
Minister of Trinidad and Tobago. I remember, this gentleman had studied at Oxford and had taught at Harvard University. His daughter happened to be my friend when I went to Trinidad and asked me to deliver the first memorial lecture. So I did some research on this Eric Williams. Can you imagine the Eric Williams when he came and met Nehru and these people, Nehru refused to take Indians back. You know what he did?
Mm.
He gave a large speech with the words saying, there is no mother Africa, there is no mother China, there is no mother India. Let us all settle down and make this country great. There is only one mother, that is Trinidad and Tobago. And
Trinidad and
Indians had a great
Tobago.
lease of life. You know, after that, Indians really went into educational fields, development, jobs, and so many other things. He provided a lot of opportunities, and Indians forgot. But problem is because their roots of, uh, hereditary roots, I would say, are their roots of families were in India, that fascination for India down to present day continues even to this day among them.
That remains. That is
That's
even
still there.
in the Romas and Romans, those gypsies who went thousands and thousands years ago to those areas. They still sing those folk songs, which has an elements,
Also,
and they have the pride.
yes,
They have the pride of India. Even Mata Hari, for that matter, she used to say that
yes,
I'm Kashmiri, not
absolutely.
only Indian. My ancestry is from Kashmiri, and some Germans
Kashmir,
also say.
yes,
So this
yes,
thing, as I was saying,
yes, absolutely.
this yeah. So yeah, let's talk about. V.S. Naipaul. Did you go to his literature? Did you? You are writing
I did
about
not study
Trinidad and
much of.
Tobago.
I did not study much of it. I think one of the books I have studied when I was there at Trinidad, but not
Okay.
other texts.
So what is the administrative structure? Is it a safe haven for a common citizen to live in Trinidad?
Uh,
Is it an open
you
society? Yeah.
see, initially when these people went, there was lot of threat because the number of women among the Africans and Indians were less. So there were
Okay.
lots of reports of initially raping the Indian women, killing Indians, and so on. But of course, since they were in large number, later on we find that a proportionate number of women were also taken as indentured and taken to Trinidad and all that. But most of them did suffer very badly. Up to almost 47 when this fellow after 47 when Eric Williams took over. After Eric
Okay.
Williams took over, they were given a lease of life. But when these Africans also, they are not very sort of, I would say, hardworking in that way, the way Indians were working. And they felt jealous and had frequent trouble with Indians. Suppose, for example, we found that the frequent for common men, the threat of kidnapping was there, extortion threats were there, which
Like their African
finally,
countries,
with more modernization, with more education, with Government of India also doing lots of things in Trinidad and Tobago, we found that these things started coming down now. And now we find there are marriages taking place between the Indian families and Chinese, Indians and Africans, Indians and French community who are referred as Creole in the parlance of Trinidad and Tobago. Uh, because Africans found that they had nothing fascinating in their culture when they came as laborers. While as this Ramayana, music, and the other kinds of Indian oral traditions which had been taken by these people along, that found favor with this community and helped the community to survive. Not
it
only
filled up the
survive, it gave
vacuum.
them identity as
Identity
well as superiority before the African culture. That Africans also, they also write and they also agree,
acknowledge.
about it, that it was considered to be a superior culture. Indian culture was very superior. There's no doubt about it.
What is the polity? Polity. It is an electoral, the democratic process of electing the
Oh,
governance, or
I, I,
it is just a
I can
theocratic.
tell
Yeah.
you that's another interesting story. You see,
Yes.
Mr. J.S. Sapra was one of the high commissioners who told me once there, he said, Hangloo Sahab, let us go. You are a historian. I want you to watch the election here. I
Okay.
went to the election meeting and listened to the same, this Dukheran in Shagwana constituency, and he was giving a lecture, election lecture, general, campaign and t-shirts being distributed. And he was talking about so many things, invoking Indianness and all that. I think that was a couple of months after I reached there. After the election was over, I said there was a group of people. I said that, I wonder whether he will make this time, he will win or so. They said, why? I said, look here, because uh, I do not find anything very tempting in his speech. For because if we look at the crowd, it was all young people there.
Hmm.
So he was addressing a different constituency. After a few days, when the election results came, it was 12:30 in the night, and my residence was very close to where the results were being announced. The public was, conducting processions and gala days and all that. And when the election results were announced, this Winston Dukheran lost.
Hmm.
He lost the election.
Oh, he lost.
I remember having exchanged my words with Sapra and those friends.
Yeah.
Finally, the election again came, and I was, by the time I had left Trinidad, I was in Hyderabad. It was summer holiday. I had shifted to Jammu to see my parents and others in hot summers. I got a phone call from Ministry of Culture, Indian Council of Cultural Relations, one Mr. S.K. Singh, telling me that you got to get back to Hyderabad immediately. We have a guest who wants frantically to meet you.
Hmm.
I had, along with my nephew, I went back, leaving family in Jammu. I went to Hyderabad, brought a bottle of Coca Cola and some juices and so on to greet this friend. I still remember. I will send you that photograph sometimes when we meet. I think it's in my Facebook also. A huge Mercedes stopped outside my house, and a tall gentleman with his suit and other things came in, put a hand on my shoulder, and we hugged each other and all that. He said, when my nephew gave him a glass of water, he said, no, I don't want anything. I have
Hmm.
only come to seek a question, answer for a question. I said, what is that? He said, when you left Trinidad, you had told some of the friends in my last election that I am not going to win this election. Now I'm
Hmm.
again fighting the election.
Hmm.
Can you again predict it? I said, I am not a Pandit. He said, then what, on what basis did you do? I said, look here,
Hmm.
globalization has taken place. Technology has
Hmm.
made so much of progress. All
Hmm.
those people whom you were talking to during the election, they were all whispering that there is nothing for us. He's not talking about jobs. He's not talking about creating new institutions. And therefore, they
Hmm.
did not vote for you. And
Hmm.
that's why you lost. He said, oh, you gave me a boon of information. And we sat for a couple of hours. He went back. The second day, he flew back. He again fought the election and ended up as acting prime minister and finance minister for a long period of time again. Winston Dukheran.
So I
And we
was
were in
asking
touch
for
for
the
a long
polity.
time.
I was asking for the polity.
Yeah.
So it's a
It's
democratic
a, it's
structure.
a, I would say it's a really wonderful democratic society because number of people is not large. They vote, they have a democratic system, they have a president, they have a prime minister, they have ministers, they have well built institutions and very vibrant institutions, robust bureaucracy, you know, different kinds of services, so on. And the country is not poor because it has lot of revenues that come from trade and also from oil. That's the greatest boon of economy, in fact.
And
And it
any
has not
influences
large
of
population to cater.
the corridors of ex-colonizers or the other corridors of power surrounded or nearby, like the Westerners.
Uh, I would say they have been, of course, they had immense amount of influences of, colonial masters, which is now being replaced by the Americanization, I would say.
Oh,
The British influences, in fact, that control and that system completely being influenced by the Americans now. But the Americans, as well as the British or the Africans, they are not in a position to break their nexus with India. They are not in a position to reduce and bring down their fascination for their
image, prestige of India.
mother country and like that. Yeah. irrespective of the fact that they have lived generations and so on. Because there are many people whom I interviewed, there are many libraries I visited, scanned a lot of their literature for 2 years. It was sufficient time for me to do a lot of this work and so on. So that has not come down, that is there.
What about the modernization and the education system and the modernization and other aspects? Have they come in speedily,
I
or they are yet at the senile pace?
No, they have been, you see, they have the advantage of America being, in fact, I think 4 hours or 3 hours run from their country. And most of the intellectuals, senior ones, in fact, of my generation are ones who got educated, in England and
Oh,
US. Therefore,
like
the
we are
modernization is a very, I would say, their modernization is very well disciplined modernization in terms of
that's what I wanted. Yeah.
institutions, for example. Discipline in the sense, in terms of building institutions, for example. In terms of infrastructure, they are very rich. There's no doubt about it. And
Resources.
overall country, it's yeah, resources, they are very rich, in fact. And technologically also they are very well equipped with this knowledge and banking system, other things. They are robust system, in fact, I would say.
I was said one gentleman who was into kind of a diplomat in South Africa. He told me that even the post liberation, post that the period of South Africa liberation, uh, uh, there is always a danger encountered on the streets. People are so, I mean, the people are into arson, into snatching. Life is very full of threats. Daily life is full of threats over there. What about Trinidad and Tobago? Because they have the connection, African connection over there. That's why I wanted to
You
ask
see,
about that.
it's a, you see, in context of Trinidad, actually, it was not. I have found I had very good friends among the Africans also. In fact, I remember a family where a child was known as Veda. Then I asked them, "What does Veda mean in African?" They said, "Not African. We learned from our Indians that they say Rig Ved is there, Veda is there, our scripture. So therefore, he is named after that." My point is that Africans directly, you see, would not sort of indulge. It was hostility was there earlier, but after the democratic setup was established, basically Syrians wanted to capture the business in the country,
Oh,
and the Chinese. The Syrians and Chinese, because this business, entire business was in the hands of Indians. Because since large population was Indian, therefore everything. I can give you an example. One Ram Kishan, who was considered to be, he was known as Chicken King in Trinidad Tobago. All the
mm.
poultries were owned by Ram Kishan in Trinidad and Tobago. Very, very rich man. He was kidnapped by Syrian Muslim family,
Oh,
and after paying the ransom, but the activity took place, an African was used to kidnap him, and then they paid lot of ransom, they paid, and his business came drastically down. It went out of his hands into a Syrian family, into Chinese families later. So this was basically kind of, it was happening earlier. But after, I would say, the second phase of this Kamala Visheshar, we found there was a lot of, even Vasudev Pandey also. The things were stabilized, and like that. A lot of education spread and so on. Now mugging does not take place on the roadside and so on. Africans also have got their establishments, and Syrians were also now competed by, sometimes collaborated, sometimes confronted by the Chinese.
Chinese,
China
Chinese.
also has a great business influence in Trinidad and Tobago, but India has a strong presence in that country, I would say.
Yes, I wanted to ask that India's presence as a political big brother, as a inherited country from which they come from, as a patron. What kind of a role does India have in this Caribbean
India,
islands?
I would say India is, in a way, it is a big brother, I would say.
Okay.
Because these Africans also, for example, feeling fascinated by Indians and Indian system. We have a connection with them because this country is also, the second name for Trinidad Tobago is also cricket country.
Yes.
You know, Our Lara comes from there. In fact, I have seen his home and his family there.
Mara.
We find that this cricket affiliation with Indians is also. You can imagine. I can tell you an interesting thing. I remember there was a cricket match,
Hmm.
India and Africa, some other country, which was played in Trinidad, and Trini Indians were clapping from Indian side, not from the side of the Africa who are local. In fact, even if there was a match between Trinidad, and India, they would clap Indian side.
That's something great. That's something.
So
That's
therefore, that
something
is
gives us a hope.
they
That
have.
is something which gives us.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right. And now
Uh,
it has been also taken over, with Chinese Indian businessmen from Gujarat, various other parts are also competing and supplying various materials and so on. So that's also
hmm.
giving India a better handle for monitoring the relationship in Trinidad and Tobago.
And you have also visited. We didn't talk about Berlin. Did we talk about Berlin University, or did we talk about
We did not
your?
talk about Berlin. Berlin, in fact, I had series of lectures to deliver at the Berlin Free University Berlin. I had to deliver large number of lectures, in fact, Bamberg, Berlin, which were part of my academic exercise on Silk Route, in fact, because that concerned them. You see, I visited Berlin before the fall of Berlin Wall also, and after the fall of Berlin Wall also.
Hooray! That's something very
So,
great.
yeah,
And what was the
very, very
change? What was
interesting,
the
in fact.
change? Social change you found?
Change
I
I
mean,
found, I can tell you, change was, when I visited before the fall of, this fall and collapse of, fully collapse of this Soviet Union. I remember a lady who
USSR.
was supposed to, she was teaching in Berlin University, named as Robotka. She was telling me that, look here, I have a big house, but I cannot give it on rent when Western Germany was, under capitalism, and this lady was staying in Eastern Germany, was under communist influence. And she said,
Hmm.
I cannot give it on rent at all, and space goes waste. When I visited second time, I said, she met me again, and she said, I'm becoming very rich now. You can see, because
Thronged
I
by the
use that space and
Eastern
I'm giving
Germany.
it on rent. Eastern Germany. Yeah. She said that now we are same country. Look here, I am in a position to give it on rent and earn money out of it. You can see that the capitalism was absent earlier, and now because Western part of it had become thoroughly capitalistic. I can tell you that Germany, compared to, I have been 27 times to US till now. I can tell you, of all the European countries, I found Germany was the most developed country,
It has
most
always
developed,
been
in
like
fact.
that, excepting that
Yeah,
Hitler's
western
period.
western part of it, western part of it. Now, of course, eastern also, and now it has immense amount of problems also after it gave citizenships to the Turkish people and other
Turkey.
migrants and so on. Now it has a bundle of problems. It's not a happy
You have
nation
been
today.
you have been to Turkestan also, to that that Ashgabat
Turkmenistan
University.
history was a different thing. Ashgabat University, in fact, it was initially not an academic, but it turned out to be an academic in the sense.
Hmm.
Uh, the president of Turkmenistan, Niyazov, when the Soviet Union broke away, sent a
Hmm.
team of people to India to visit different universities. He was trying to look for an academician who could provide a kind of ideology that would help him to legitimate his rule in invoking the ethnicity of Turkoman culture, in
Okay.
his country. That I did not discover in the beginning. That I did because
Hmm.
this team came with his secretary. He's one of the foreign secretaries and the ambassador in India, and visited
Hmm.
different, different institutions in India, including Aligarh and so on and like that. I remember a professor from JNU Geography Department also was there. My friend, I would say Raj Babbar, he was also, no, that was second time, sorry, first
Raj
time.
Babar, I got a
First time there
photograph
was a
also.
professor from geography only, and I was there. I think I was first time only. So I was taken there, and I still remember that in that meeting when I went, there was Iranian, there was a Pakistani gentleman who had an argument with the Iranian. I think there was somebody, I would not like to name the person, who told the president, the secretary, after my arrival to that country and to that meeting, that look here, this fellow is a Indian, but he's a Hindu. I am a Muslim, And the secretary shot back saying, it does not matter for us who is Hindu and who is Muslim. What matters for
Really?
us is who transacts our business. And then I discovered, I had read Mughal history extensively as a medieval historian. I asked Niazo personally, I said, look here, your country needs a hero like we have Gandhi, for example. Now Gandhi is, hated also by some people, but let us leave aside the debate. So I said, like
Ataturk.
we have father of the nation and so on.
They
He
want to
said,
say
who could be
Ataturk.
our father?
Hmm.
I said, no. I said, this Baram Khan, who was a Turkoman. He was advisor to Babar. He was advisor to Akbar. Oh, this fellow jumped. I tell you, he took out his watch, which has
Okay.
gone spoiled now, but that watch is still, he took out, I still remember, I tell you, he took out his
Hmm.
watch and put it on my wrist. He said, this is the one what I wanted. And then I had to dig up information about Baram Khan and provide him there. Then they invited me second time to give lectures into the university, but it was more of academic meetings with their bureaucracy and so on. And they build on that. If you go to
They
Turkmenistan
have,
today, you will find dozens of buildings and forts and big, huge structures in the name of Baram Khan. You will find Baram Khan statues
they have
everywhere,
invented.
like
You
Gandhi
you
has,
gave them you
yeah,
gave them their hero.
dotted this dotted the space of Turkmenistan and so on. Then there was a
Koshur.
delegation of India,
Ko-
which government of India sent sometimes. Uh,
Okay.
that delegation included a Gandhian lady, a professor from JNU, Qureshi, Raj Babbar, myself, and like that. And we did a lot of work which helped our country to have a good relationship with the country ultimately. And Niazub gave me wonderful details and so on. It's a very, very interesting country after the breakup and how they have built it, but they have done it very meticulously, institution wise.
You have been to this university of in West Bengal also. You served as vice chancellor there.
Okay,
Uh,
right,
uh,
yeah.
City of Joy. I call it City of Joy. Calcutta. I'm also a very frequent visitor of Calcutta. City of Joy.
In
Even
fact,
my
I
one
was
of my lecture,
this after
one of my lecture was on this Mr. Pandit, the first Indian advocate of British colonial period, was Kashmiri
Shambhunath Pandit. I have
Shambhunath
a
Pandit.
I have a
Shambhunath
book
Pandit.
and lot of I have some
Yeah.
resources on Shambhunath Pandit.
I do
Yeah.
have
He was
his
one
book,
of the.
and I
There is
brought
a street.
his great granddaughter
there-
from Bengali wife.
Right,
She came on my show.
right.
I had the photographs. I
Okay,
talked to
great.
their offsprings and offshoots. Yeah,
There,
there's a
most
book
of the
written by the
judges are
same
living in
lady.
a street which. Right.
Yeah,
There is a street in Calcutta which is dedicated to Shambhunath Pandit, where most of
Shambhunath
the
Street.
judges,
Yes,
like
I know.
Supreme Court Judge
Hospital also.
Mukherjee and all.
Hospital.
Yes.
Shambhunath
I have the
Hospital.
earlier version of. I have the earlier version of the book, which is a small one, but a new one has come now. One of my friend wrote to me recently that
I got
it
that
has come.
book.
I
I
think
got that
he
book, and
sent it
I
also.
brought a lecture. But that's
Okay.
a
You
wonderful. I
see,
want to know
this
about Calcutta, city of joy,
okay,
and you are being there at
before
Kalyani
I
University as a vice chancellor. Yeah,
before I before I come to that Calcutta, let me tell you an interesting thing. There
yeah,
is no branch of knowledge, there is no branch of diplomacy which has not been touched by Kashmiris almost all over the world.
that's true.
Neil Kashkari, a person from origin of Kashmir, was Obama handling Obama's finances, for example. When we say Genghis Khan, one Mr. Cole who happened to be, you read on Genghis Khan, you will find he was his advisor. Mohanlal Kashmiri was a great diplomat who facilitated British connections in Central Asia. I have the great game, and if you want, I can show you Mohanlal Kohli's photograph in that book, how he looks like an Iranian. He would go
Yes.
every year to Iran and marry and come back and dump those ladies in Hyderabad, then again go and all. But he was a great diplomat of the British, which British also acknowledge. Mohanlal Kohli's daughter was the first one who went to Europe among the Kashmiris to study. Uh, Coming to Calcutta, there's no branch of knowledge, I tell you, where Kashmiris have not
Yes,
significantly,
Kashmiris. I have
contributed. That's
almost
my
covered many of
point.
them, and many I need to. Yeah,
Yeah, right from beginning. Calcutta was, when I was assigned this task of heading the vice chancellorship at Kalyani University, I found the university was in shambles because there was lot of crime in that area as well as in the university had been really, you can check it from many other sources also, even from Tapan Chatterjee, retired,
Tapan sir.
IGP, one of the famous IGP from Bengal. And when I
Mhm.
went to that university, something very interesting I found. There was a lot of talent, a lot of merit, but people were living under threat. You know, my first task was to, I went there and uh, I remember one of the registrars of the university or some official who picked me up from Calcutta airport in a very old car and whispered into my ear, "Sir, we have to enter from the back door, not the front." Then I said, "No, I will go to the front door. I don't care." For, as I was telling you, that glory comes from daring to begin. So I went from front door and they did a lot of puja and all that. But I found the university was huge area. The first one of the early universities, that famous doctor who was the first chief minister of Bengal, and then Nehru contributed. Two cities were created. Kalyani in West Bengal and Chandigarh in Punjab were created by Nehru at the same time. The
Modern
house I
city.
renovated and stayed was where Vijay Lakshmi and Nehru used to stay in Kalyani proper. So my point is, academic, there was a lot of merit and very brilliant people in that university, but they were living under threat because some of the elements in non-teaching staff had developed this extraction mentality, CPM
Oh,
mentality, so many other kinds of confusions were there, and like that. I still remember some people telling me,
dirty
so and
side of
so
the ledger.
fellow, I am forgetting his name, is coming to the office with a katta and threatened and like
Oh,
that. After
my God.
couple of months, when I started reforming the university, I removed curtains of the entire university. I got doors, half glass, half wood. For entire nearly 200 doors changed in the building. I build its health system. I build its academic ordinances. I build its academic, infrastructure in such a way. You should not ask me. You should ask it to people that when university was graded after I left, it was given better grade than what is that famous university in Calcutta now? Uh,
Um,
Presidency. It was given better
Presidency.
grade than presidency, and we had large number of people getting projects from CSIR, from defense labs, from various others, and people. You can imagine the person who got into Science Academy now is also the person who worked with me as a professor in that university. We have a brilliant political scientist, Sumit Mukherjee, from that
Sumit.
university. These all are, there are so many others who have retired, in fact, from field of physics and so on. We removed that threat. After a couple of months, I tell you, one day my own driver and security fellow came and said, "Sir, today also we need not go to university." I said, "Why?" He said, "Near the gate, so many people have gathered, they want to shoot the vice chancellor today." I said,
Oh,
"No, today only I must go." When I went, and I remember one gentleman called Anjan Datta. He was there with some people. I said, "Please, Anjan, come tell me what is the crime that we have done for setting this." He ran away, and all people left away. They went around and so on. So we built that university by looking into academic ordinances. Of course, we had to give, when you are working in an institution, we had to give some suspensions to teach them certain lessons, and yeah. But the university has, I would say, even today, one of the controllers who has misused that university. I had given him a suspension by a controller of examinations, who is a, I got an inquiry done about him, and Bimilendu. I got inquiry done by the senior, this DGP, Director General of
okay.
Police, and he was found guilty of having stolen funds, having done lots of things bad. We have the complete report, e-report, available even today. But that was brought back by one of the Trinamool Minister, Partho Chatterjee, with whom I had always difference of opinion because he was not a straight man. Many of my Bengali friends know it, that I told him in television show and on telephone. I said, "You are destroying, education in Bengal. You be within your limits." When he was talking and disturbing the university, I had to turn back a minister. You can imagine, on one meeting day for a function was going on, when I invited governor, and minister on his own came with some of the goons near the gate. I disallowed him. I had the courage to tell him that I will not allow you to enter the university. The same minister which I had predicted is rotting in the jail now, Partho Chatterjee. But we turned that university around. We
Into
turned that
something. And
university around because
you
I found one interesting thing among Bengalis. If you give a leadership and want to change for better, they will all join you.
will
This
cooperate.
uh, this is something very interesting which I found in Bengal. This afternoon only I was talking to
Bengalis.
somebody. I said, of all the places I have moved, I still like Bengal.
Bengal is, I mean,
So we did
their
lot of good work there.
Rabindro
We
Sangeet, their
you see,
culture, their
uh,
celebration, their
yes, yes.
intellectualism.
You see,
I used to go to, I remember I used
there,
to go to the crest.
I would say I love Bengal and Bengalis. You can imagine this concept of smart classroom, which became a fashion in India. I was the first vice chancellor who did it in Kalyani University. The question of smart classrooms and so on. Everything. Have you found any vice chancellor who does the interview and selections under video?
No.
I have even those videos, I have the copies with me. Thousands of videos I have kept e-copies of everything, and the videos are here. I used to do the selection also. You know, selection committee would take place in videograph so that nothing goes wrong and so on.
So what else?
So
What else
we
did you
really
see?
promoted a lot of talent.
What else did you witness in Bengal, in Calcutta, especially Bose Museum, Thakur Badi, Bose Museum, Prince of Ghats, and what else? What did
Lots of
fascinate you? British
the
imperialistic.
greatest thing to tell you, you see, one fascinating thing, or I had some Bengali teachers also. One of them is no more, in fact. My great guru's wife is a Bengali, Bunani Majumdar. She was a professor in Delhi University and
Yes.
still living. Greatest thing I found is that Bengalis, like Kashmiris, have greatest intellectual tradition. Even if you find a driver in Bengal who is completely, he will also write a novel when he retires, if he does nothing after retirement. They have a rich intellectual tradition. This nobody,
I'll tell you.
as
I'll
Bengalis
narrate
very
one.
rightly say,
Yeah.
you see, Bengalis very rightly say that what Bengal thinks today, world thinks tomorrow. But I add
That's
that a little bit. I believe that. I certainly believe that. But I add that what Kashmiri thinks not. What Kashmiri does today, the world does it tomorrow. Kashmiri Pandit
that's
particularly.
That's so wonderful. I
So they
remember
have
whenever
intellectual
I used to go to Kharagpur, Crest Kharagpur. I used to go there to have
right.
some lectures there. I used to travel by tram from Calcutta to Kharagpur, and on the way
Right.
I could see these torn shirted people sitting on this the heavily thronged tram, and the duplicate those novels, international novels in English and Bengali being sold by him for 50 rupees, 100 rupees, and everyone in the tram is reading like this. Everyone in the tram is reading.
Something.
Even
Yes,
I mean, person who
absolutely.
looks like a peon, he is also reading. There is something great
You
about
see,
and
you
women.
right.
Respect to the
Absolutely.
women. Yeah.
Women, respect to the women. Very right. I tell you an interesting thing about Bengali society, for example. Uh, if you look for all over India, if you look
Mm,
for 10 scientists, 10 historians, 10 anthropologists, 10 statisticians, in any field you choose a dozen. This
mm.
dozen would be dominated by a large number in each aspect by a Bengali. A friend of mine has sent me only
Bengalis. I mean,
uh,
it will take a lot of time to discuss about Bengal. Even Tagore for itself, Tagore. It will take
oh yes,
almost a month
absolutely,
to discuss Tagore.
month
Bengalis are
to
very
discuss
class
Tagore,
apart.
his Gitanjali, and so on. Yeah, absolutely. It is
Nobody
really
can
fascinating
compare him.
society which has
People
really
say that why did he
significantly
get the
contributed.
Nobel Prize? There was no one parallel to him in India and even the complete now Pakistan, ex-India. There was
Right.
no one here to
No one,
compare
yeah,
with the
who could
Tagore.
absolutely with him. It was
पांचे
not
बसा
simply
हुमिस्नूल
because
ये मिस्नूल
no,
मैं
no,
बता रहा हूँ
no.
ना
You
ये
see,
वो
his contribution is
क्लास
unparalleled. His contribution is unparalleled.
प्योर
He
प्योर
contributed to literature, poetry, music, so many new things. He was a great innovator. I am telling you that
stories
you look
my
for
god
12
that's fascinating.
most brilliant 10 scientists, you will find 8 of them would be from Bengal. The Bose is
That's
from there. You can imagine a best beautiful book has arrived to me only yesterday by a friend from Kharagpur IIT, on
I take it.
the mystic scientist on J.C. Bose, you can imagine.
अरे,
They have a great
but
tradition. They have a great tradition,
So let's now
intellectual tradition and so on.
let's come to this conclusion of this session. And certainly, before conclusion, I would like to have a quick photo tour. I have photographs with you, and certainly we'll take if you intend that we can just go for a photo tour, quick photo tour.
Oh, yes.
So this is a photograph,
This is my mother and my father with me in Assam, in one of the
oh,
park in Guwahati.
Guwahati. I see.
This is Mr. Janardhan Dwivedi, my friend who is in Congress, and myself. He was minister, he was MP, he is the one. This is my office in uh, Allahabad. So he is the one who taught Sonia Gandhi Hindi. His
Oh, I
PhD
see.
in Hindi, Dr. Janardhan Dwivedi. This my
Is
wife
your
and
wife?
myself. After we got second child was about to come. That's why you can
She
see
appears.
us
She appears
fat
pregnant here.
stomachs
No?
there. Yeah, yeah. She taught physics. Her biography is coming. This is one Bengali Muslim gentleman who has written this book on me, My Days in Kalyani.
Your days in Kalyan. Oh, that's
Kalyani,
so
yeah.
wonderful.
In fact, there is one gentleman who is also a professor from Lucknow wrote about this is one of the Vajpayee's ministers and myself in one of the meeting in UP. This is in this picture. You can see the famous film director of Bengal. His associates
Tapan
and
Sinha?
friends
Okay.
inviting me on one of the cultural festivals to inaugurate that festival.
Yes, yes, I can see. I mean, I'd forgotten his name. I can
Uh,
see the person there with the red jacket.
This is this is the book in Urdu, Tarika Anmol Ratan, which has
Okay.
appeared from Lucknow. In fact, about me, done it good Tankidi literature, I would say nicely. It's here.
Okay. Yes, yes.
This is Professor Irfan Habib, presenting me his books, which I have with me after I delivered Sir Syed Memorial Lecture in Aligarh. Of
Irfan
course, that
Habib is
was
the
an
most
invitation by Zamiruddin Shah. That was
he's become
invitation
a
by
most
dear Vice
control.
Chancellor, but yeah,
But one thing I liked in him that he is secular to the practice. His daughter is married to a Professor Mishra or something from an university. I mean,
yeah,
he
yeah.
has not he didn't mind that his daughter marrying to a Hindu or something like that. So for that matter, I really feel that
Uh,
somewhere along the line, yeah.
this is our West Bengal governor. When I went to meet him after I joined as Vice Chancellor, because he was my Chancellor that time,
Okay, the
R.K.
vice
Narayanan
chancellor
from
meeting.
Kerala. Yeah.
He seems to be a
He
South
was
Indian.
Chancellor, I
Yes,
was Vice Chancellor. This is our Kao Sahab, Secretary
Kausar.
MHRD. After his retirement, we met. Yeah, we met. He
Kausar
was
to
also a
Vichar
good
Bandhu.
friend, in fact.
And he used to help people. I
Gee, he
remember
was
his people used
very helpful. Very, and he had this is Biju Maharaj. I was supposed to in one of the functions before becoming vice. I was those days associate professor when I had to present some. I did a lot of good work for Hyderabad University, and I had to present the mementos to him and his team.
He's a brilliant. I have very close access to
Yeah.
him.
In this
This about
picture,
your
you
village.
can see this is the this is my grandmother in the corner, and she's holding me with her two hands the very first day when I was put in school. To her left
Oh,
is my one elder brother, then is my eldest brother, and my two sisters in village.
oh, wonderful. Great picture.
This is
Again,
again
Briju
the
Maharaj,
same that function with Briju Maharaj. This is a book which was written by my students some time back,
shaping
shaping
Indian
history
history
across
across times
years,
and regions.
times. Yeah, this is also Briju Maharaj's team. This is
Mm,
our former secretary MHRD Sharma ji. He's from originally from Kutwa. Once we went to Ganges together. This is in one of
okay.
the functions, in fact, in UP when I was supposed to talk. Our Yogi
Yogi
ji.
ji.
Yogi ji, we met. We were good friends before he became CM. And
Okay. You used to go
after
to his
CM,
much.
also I wrote foreword to his. The first book that was written on him, I wrote the foreword to that book.
You went to his mutt, Gorakhpur mutt those times.
Yes, yes, yes. We stayed there for the night. This is Greater Mizoram hero. The first chief minister of Mizoram, Brigadier Silo. My wife here. We are there in his house. There's a party. Uh,
Oh,
so we had a good relationship with him. In fact, it's Raj Babar and myself. This is Bharat Ratan, our CNR Rao, and myself. After listening to his lecture, and then we were together. This is a it's called Abhinandan in Allahabad, and I am speaking there, and you can see Madan Mohan Malviya's son also was presiding over this, and very other eminent people, in fact, in that meeting. This is
Again, a
my
village.
maternal grandmother, my Mosi, and her children. I kept this picture particularly because this Mosi and her all children and husband, they died in accident after migration took place. The
Oh my
entire
God.
family died in an accident. Her
They
grown-up
belong to the
son, who was married,
Hampton
his
code only.
children, the entire family. In fact, while going to Hardwar or so, they just met
Oh,
an accident and passed. Very
very sad.
tragic. This is my, I am here, in fact, to right side of my mother, upper, the first lane up there, and my eldest brother to the left of the mother. I am to the right. My younger brother is here. My two, three younger sisters in the front. We are, as I said, we are nine children in that family. So it was
Oh,
not a smooth sailing for me at all. It was very difficult time because without resources, we had to really put a hard life,
especially
eke out our living also. And this is a marriage photograph of one of my brother those days. Now
okay.
you find different marriages taking place, different kind of system you can see that time. And the purohit, our priest, also celebrating at that marriage.
It's your house.
This is my ancestral home, the house where I was born, in first floor of this house in one of the corner rooms.
There's a beautiful dub
Before
over there. No?
migration, we had changed, this thatch roof had been made into tin roof. That was the
Okay.
only change.
But I like the dub. I like
And
the
I'm
dub. Dub.
dub,
Mm.
and the dub, yes, yes. I'm proud of my background, irrespective of the fact. I am proud of my,
And
all
the
family,
old
my
lady, old
parents,
ladies
my,
used to put diya at the dub in the evening. Diya ek
yes,
jalate
yes,
the na
absolutely.
evening mein.
In हाँ, शाम में वो चोंग उसको कहते हैं, चोंग जलाते थे
Oh, sala.
सायंकाल. Sayamkal mein, yes, that is true. This is, you can imagine, this is Indresh ji and Ved Prakash Vatuk, giving some award to me in Delhi in one of the function. I happened to be one of the speakers for it. Had nothing to do with BJP or RSS that time. Ved Prakash
Was
Vatuk,
just
by
a
the time,
function.
by the way, he is not from RSS. So in that function, they just sort of, because some lectures were there, I also spoke, and they honored me there. This is
This is with your
Assam
Assam
Chief
citizen.
Minister, and his, yeah, Mohanta. He's a good friend of mine because I served in Northeast before he became Chief Minister. So we
Where is
used to
Mahanta
meet earlier
nowadays?
also.
What's he doing nowadays?
He's
He's
staying
retired.
quietly in Assam.
Okay.
He's
There's
he's
other,
feeling misfit into the present polity. This is at my home
but
when they came to visit me.
his polity was also very bloody. I mean, lot many blood.
Very, very, yes, he's very bloody polity. There's no doubt about it. Again, Janardhan Divedi and myself. This is when I was given Mother Teresa International Award for Education. This is Archbishop who had come from some country, and so it was given in Calcutta.
Okay.
This is my friend here. It's our Rajya Sabha Deputy Speaker Rajya Sabha, Harbans ji, his friend, and I am here. So they are honoring me somewhere in some function. I think it was some poetry function. This is Pranab Mukherjee, myself, because I was the vice chancellor, and R.K.
Ajani University.
Narayanan. In fact, Pranab Mukherjee is one of the colleges was to be opened, and he invited me to be there at that time in Murshidabad, like that. He was also a great soul.
Yeah. Pranab
It's
Mukherjee was a genius,
this
brilliant
is
man.
Tripathi ji. He was a very good, jurist,
Speaker.
advocate, and he was Speaker of UP Assembly in crucial times. He was Governor West Bengal. He passed away as governor, and his son has been given ticket by BJP now, in Neeraj Tripathi in Allahabad. A great soul, a great human being.
Harshvardhan.
I want to tell you something very interesting here in the sense I think people should know about it. You know,
Hmm.
uh, in Allahabad BJP camp, you have Tripathi and Murli Manohar Joshi who used to fight. And
Okay.
When I joined as vice chancellor, I was asked by that Javadekar fellow, I still remember, that you should do only what Murli Manoj Joshi tells you. I said, I will not do anything what anybody tells me. I'll do what I feel is right. When he tried to talk too much, there is a video. I told him as a minister, I said, you are my foot, don't intervene. He went to Murli Manoj Joshi, saw to it that there is an inquiry, some nonsense in press against me. But Tripathi was a
Okay.
great soul, They all, Tripathi used to tell me that you have really, contributed to Allahabad University's good luck, including Harshvardhan, when they saw the amount of work that I did in Allahabad University.
I've heard about it that you have done a lot of work there.
Yeah.
Controversies happen.
This is
Rajnath
Rajnath Ji.
Singh,
Rajnath Ji is a great soul, Rajnath Singh. Yeah, I have a good relationship with
gentleman,
him, even irrespective of the fact that our ideologies differ. But he's a great soul, I would say. He's a great administrator also.
gentleman, core.
Gentleman, yes, you are right. This Chief Minister of UP in some function honoring me, and then there is a Mahinder Pandey with whom I had no good relationship at all because when he was Minister of State for HRD, he was little cranky and not knowledgeable about things. So therefore, I used to keep him away. I have the habit. I never bowed my head before anybody. Like the vice chancellors going to homes of ministers and
Oh,
like that. I
that
never
should
did
not be.
that anything of that
You have to
sort.
keep the dignity of the chair.
Dignity.
Karan Singh ji,
Our Karan Singh ji, who released the book, we were together. He released this book on Caribbean by dint of being chairman and also being a Kashmiri. He brought out this book. I mean, he released it at Delhi. In fact,
agrarian
this is my
system of Kashmir.
agrarian
You have
system. It will be coming out with revision now, both from London and New Delhi. This
medieval
is
India.
enquiries into medieval India, no doubt.
We talked about it. Indian
This
diaspora and
is the
Caribbean.
book we
There
were
are
talking
other
about.
people also who
Yes.
contributed as essays to this book. Other
Yeah,
people,
some
other
of
person.
them. Yes, yes. There are a couple of people, two, three people, in fact. This is Allahabad. This is my Hindi poem.
And, yes,
This is
yes.
what I
Now
feel
from
is
this, I
the.
you recited one of the poem in the beginning, so we'll conclude with your one of your poems at the end also. And before that,
Okay,
I'll just
sure,
finish this photo
certainly.
session. You
Sure.
already shown this book. This book is already shown by you.
Yes, yes. This is there already written by some. Oh, this is the book published by Francis and Taylor in London. Routledge
Second
R is
edition.
there. This is the book. Yeah, it's here. I'll send you e-copy of this book. You will find it interesting for reading.
You send,
When I
kindly send
happen
it.
to be
I'm
next
interested in
time,
this
you
book
can get a
because I
copy.
want to
Yeah,
really know the
right.
corroborative evidences and the sources against the
Yes, yes, yes.
time
That
and
that is
commitment.
very absolutely, absolutely. You
I'm
see,
not a scholar, but I'm
you were
interested. I'm a student of history. Yeah.
you see,
Uh,
you were telling me. You see, you were telling me about the day before about Shaivism and so on. I
yes,
really
yes.
wanted to bring it to your notice that I did lot of work on it, which is not yet published because that's part of my coming book now, which
Okay.
happens to be the major book on Kashmiri Pandit, in fact. You see, I'll show you a fascinating statement from Tantra Loka. You can imagine it's here.
Abhinav Guptas. Yeah.
Uh, yes, this is the research which is going on, and
Hmm.
I'm reading it to you. Abhinav Gupta, the 10th century philosopher of Kashmir Shaivism, says Shaivism was not a religion of masses. That is very hard to find even one person who is qualified to follow the Shaivism of his light of the Tantras. Nonetheless, he wishes that at least someone impelled by Shiva should make an effort to achieve perfection in this system. We have different versions. The problem with our scholarship is that they are imbued with the religious zeal when they look at historical text or Shaivism literature and so on. I
Hmm.
can tell you that I have entire Sanskrit literature scanned before me, entire English literature with me, and I have gone through most of it. My understanding of
Dispassionately.
Shaivism is different, is passionate and is totally different. This is the first picture of Shiva that appeared in the world.
This is Rudra. Hmm. In the form of
Yeah,
Rudra.
this is the first picture referred as Shiva.
This was
We
prehistoric
will
Shiva.
talk about it
Prehistoric. Yeah.
yes, please. We will
Rudra.
talk about it. Sometime
Yeah,
when we
we'll
have
have a lecture
time and so.
on this aspect someday. whenever you find
Mm.
time, and we will just see in the
Right.
future when we have a schedule to
This
do a
is the book
lecture on
which has
Kashmir.
become, this book is really very close to my heart because it became the bestseller on Amazon.
Okay, this is
My books fetch me a good royalty also. My books fetch me. It is not that I just publish. They fetch me. There's a publisher who books with me a year before, 2 years before
oh,
for a book like that. When he sort of gets to know that I'm writing something different.
books should be authentic, and they should be research. They should serve purpose also.
Yes,
It should not be like just cut,
absolutely.
copy, paste as we are doing every day here and there, and there is no corroborative evidence. There is no corroborative understanding. There is no expansion, and we are going on
Absolutely.
publishing and cut, copy, paste. That serves no purpose. It becomes rhetoric, redundant,
Abs-
and ultimately it creates nothing.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Thank you
You're
very
right.
much, sir. You came, and I'm really delighted and honored once again. Certainly, if this lecture should continue in continuum, I can say we can have for another session someday. But before we go, I want to just introduce, because you had already introduced yourself as a poet in the beginning. So I want some couplets of your, a poem of your, to be recited at the closure of this before
Uh,
we end.
one day I was thinking about myself, my own self, and I wrote a poem. I would like to recite. That's a small one.
Please, please,
Uh,
Irshad.
मैं मैं बड़ा सागर नहीं नदी की प्यास हूँ। मैं
मैं
बड़ा
बड़ा
सागर
सागर
नहीं नदी की प्यास
नदी
हूँ।
की प्यास हूँ।
एक गिरते एक गिरते अश्क के पीछे बना एहसास हूँ।
Ah,
मैं नदी की दौड़ में शामिल नहीं तो क्या हुआ। छोटे झरने से निकल कर एक बड़ा विश्वास हूँ। मैं नहीं बहता हुआ दरिया न लहरों की उमंग। एक चपेटा सा बवर जारी रवा कुछ खास हूँ। मैं
ah,
उछलता बूंद भी लहरों में हूँ। मैं किनारों से गुजरता फन भी हूँ। मैं हूं बादल बारिशें और धूप का कयास भी। कोई फाजिल कर दिया हमको भी बादे वजू। और कोई छलकाया मुझे इस शिव की पेशानी पर भी। कोई सींचा मेरे सीने से अपने खेत को। और कोई छिड़काया मुझे आग के शोलों पर भी। मैं गया तन मैं फिर गया तनहा मैं अपने वतन की राख में। मैं बड़ा सागर नहीं नदी की प्यास हूं।
all right, that's wonderful. You're given the entire this cosmology, this cycle of cosmology and the existence of a, through a personification. That's so wonderful. I really, with that, we'd like to end. Before we end, I'd like you to give a message to our youngsters and to the not only to the diaspora, to all the people, the seekers, researchers who watch it, especially the youngsters. Our youngsters who need to connect to the roots, not only through our bhajans, to our Ferran and of all these things. These are cosmetic things,
Absolutely.
but
Absolutely.
something
Absolutely.
deeper and higher.
Absolutely right. You see, I would like tell our future, generations. I would like to tell them that it's not simply by that everybody writes history, everybody writes that all of you, in whichever field you are planning to do your work, in whichever career you want to shine,
You're
shine.
chosen.
Try to be the first in the world in whichever field. Do your work with great enthusiasm. You see, we require our fields, our people in all generations, and I want to, and all fields. I want to tell the youth that look here, don't feel discouraged that your number is less. This I often quote because we are the ones who can influence public opinion in the world. It is the minority, not
Yes,
the majority, that builds public opinion. Therefore, with enthusiasm, you progress in different fields. As you very rightly said, Ferran, Samawar, and culture, our culture has changed so many times and it will change so many times. Be authentic what you study. Don't mythify Kashmiri culture. Don't mythify
yes,
Kashmiri religion.
that's true.
Try to be authentic and try to build up a scientific temper that can carry us forward all across the world and occupy powerful positions. I am among
Yes,
those believers, even if there is one drop in the glass, it can rejuvenate the entire Srishti again and
explain.
again. The community can develop and so on. But that would be only by your commitment to your Kashmiri
By
culture, not simply,
deeper
as you said
thinking.
very rightly, by talking about our food, other things, and so on. No,
Ferran and all
talk
that.
what is best, what we
This
have
Ferran
given to
was
this world.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
This
What
Farron
we
was
have given to this world,
discarded by Kashyap Bandhuji. He took the
yes,
Farron away. Now you are putting
and
Farron again.
and
I
what
don't know
we
what
are,
is there in
you see,
Farron.
what we have given to the world and what we are going to give to the
That's
world.
most important.
You know,
That's most important.
whatever is available to us, be contented with that, but aspire for better and be
Thank you.
authentic. Don't mythify religion. Don't talk about myths. You know, our
Thank you.
religion is very scientific. It believes in universal consciousness. Uphold those values which our great
It is rather,
scholars have
it's
given to
more of
us.
a
Yeah,
spirituality. I call
right.
it spirituality rather
Absolutely.
religion. Religion is
Absolutely.
a foreign word. Thank you very much, Hangloo Saab, Professor Saab. It was a great delight
Thank
that you
you
came on the
immensely.
Shitla of
You are doing a
conversation.
great service. We thank you. We salute you for doing this great service to our country and to our people.
Thank you very much.
Thank
Thanks a
you.
lot.
Namaskar.
Best wishes and good luck. We'll meet again.
Thank you. Thank you.
They say
Sure, sure.
sayonara in Japanese. Thank you.
Okay. Okay. Good evening. Namaskar.
So that was Professor Hangloo Saab, the great academician, uh, the great scholar, and former vice chancellor, great administrator, intellectual, a poet, and a native Indian, great Indian native and a Kashmiri native, and who just brimmed us with lot many, streams of wisdom. And certainly it was a very enlightening show. And we'll see that there's a lot of demand. I can see the remarks and the comments, and we can just engage him once again on some other subject. But today, I mean, I think we had a wonderful glimpse of it. I really like this entire conversation. I wish you all of you will be liking this. Before I depart, I would like to say again a couplet. It's not pessimistic, certainly not. It is the couplet which I like. I present that. ये न थी हमारी किस्मत कि विसाले यार होता, अगर यूं ही जीते रहते यही इंतजार होता. Thank you very much. Good night. Namaskar. Shabba khair. Jai Hind.